was posted according to law. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. If you all will please stand for the invocation, and then the pledge will be given by our students from Lenny Roberts. So please bow your head. Heavenly Father, thank you for today. Thank you for this week. Lord, thank you for this school district, just that you would have your hand over this district, Father, that you would have your guidance and just speak to us tonight as we go forward with your plan and what we're doing in this district. Thank you for all the blessings. Lord, I pray just a quick special prayer over all of those people in Kerr County and surrounding counties, Father, that suffered tragedy last week. Just pray for their families and for comfort, and for all of those helping and the responders that are still there working tirelessly. Thank you for what you're doing, and please be with us this evening as we continue to move forward with BCISD. In your own precious name I pray. Amen. Amen. Lenny Roberts, welcome.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the flag, one state under God, one indivisible.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, students from Lenny Roberts. We're going to move straight into good news. Does anyone have any good news this evening?
I just want to praise the school district on the summer workout programs. Our families having a joy getting up early in the morning and driving up there every day, training there all day, and driving back and forth for all the camp for percussion and band, and it really is. I'm being facetious, but it really is awesome for the kids to stay engaged and to see how much our students are going to be ahead when we start in the fall. The 7v7 girls soccer program is a phenomenal addition. Watching the area schools come in and just watching the girls get reps in. I've had a chance to referee and volunteer up there. And so there's a lot of good interaction with referees and with administrators and coaches, and parents are in the stands away from everything, and so it's perfect.
Great. I know our 7-on-7 football team advanced to state and college division this year again, so that's amazing. Thanks for all the hours and time that goes into that. I know a lot of that has to do with being up on campus a lot more in the summer than typical. So, anyone have anything else?
Yeah, I'd like to share a couple of good things. We have a new special education director, and that is Ms. Michelle Guyton. Just want to introduce her and welcome her to the team in that capacity. Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction, Mr. Richard Halley, right here. We're very excited about having him. Those two awesome people.
Great. Thanks. Welcome to the team and to your new roles. Anyone else have anything else? All right, we're going to continue with the celebration and go straight into our celebration of excellence. This evening, we're honoring Lenny Roberts students.
Hello, good evening.
How are you, ma'am?
We are so awesome, and I want to say it is summer, and so a lot of people are on vacation and not able to be here this evening, so I'm super excited that we were able to have so many kids come, because this is a huge honor. Tonight, we are celebrating our kids in 1st and 2nd grade that were the top achieving overall. So these students, we did the top 5 in reading for 1st and 2nd grade, and the top 5 in math for 1st and 2nd grade. So I always like to look at this as an indicator, and just can't wait to see. I hope they keep going, and they're in the top 10 at basically high school one day with Ms. Mosier. And so I just hope they keep excelling and doing as amazing as they are. So even though we have quite a few that are not here, I still want to honor them because they definitely deserve it. So our first one that was not able to make it is Miss Alicia O, and she's from Miss Tiffany Garcia's class. Next. For reading for 1st grade. Next for reading for 1st grade is Carter Price, and Carter's from Miss Hudson's class, but not here this evening. Next we have Grant Rodriguez from Miss Tiffany Garcia's class. Julieta Zamora from Miss Tiffany Garcia's class. Daisy Knowlton from Miss Tiffany Garcia's class. If that doesn't speak volumes, Tiffany Garcia is one of our Grow Our Own. Look how many of you, since she graduated in December, came on full time with us as a teacher in December, January. And so it's amazing to see how much they've accomplished in those few months that she had them. So great job, Ms. Garcia. And second graders for reading for the top 5. We have Haley Lara from Miss Flores, who's not here this evening. Floyd Valdez from Miss Melendez, who's not here either. Talia Mendoza is from Miss Flores' class, and she wasn't able to make it. We have Miss Grace Horn from Miss Harvey's class. Miss Dale Laris from Miss Harvey's class as well. Those two ladies are from our second grade top 5 reading. We're going to move on to our math students for first grade, the top 5, and Isaiah Bree was not able to make it from Miss Richards' class. We do have Hugo Marquez Flores from Miss Barrera's class. Aguilar from Miss Richards was not able to make it this evening. Celebrate Killian Wyckoff, and Killian was in Miss Schultz's class. Raven Gonzalez from Miss Petrosky's class. I'd just like to recap that came from Miss Richards, Miss Barrera, Miss Schultz, and Miss Petrosky's classrooms. Next, for second grade math, our top 5, we have Miss Elijah Grice from Miss Kelly. But he's not here, and he's also from Miss Kane's class. Wayne Thomas is also from Miss Kane's class. Alexander is from Miss Dykes, but was not able to make it. He's from Miss Michelle Davis' class and was not able to make it either. And Miss Dykes and Miss Maria and Michelle Davis. Sorry, Maria's her name. Michelle Davis. So let's give them all a nice round of applause. Teachers, that if you have one of the students, if you come get in the picture with our school board and our superintendent, please. If you have one of your babies up here. I'm gonna have to all take one little step backwards. Just a little bit. There you go. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Great, thank y'all. Congratulations. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Lenny Roberts. Thank you, Mrs. Wendell. We appreciate it. Always enjoy to see what's happening at the schools and to be able to honor our students. All right, moving on through the agenda, we do not have any audience with patrons this evening. So next on our agenda is LSG. Good evening, ladies. How are you all?
Good.
So we have Kelly and Madeline
Yes.
with us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for
coming in, for Debbie, and of course, Tony's retired, and so you get us tonight, so we're so excited to be here. Lots of great celebrations already happening. So if you look at your folder for last month's time tracker use, you can see that 30 minutes were spent on LSG, and talking about the student outcome goals. There were 20 minutes spent on other items, which totaled for 50 minutes. So of the 30 minutes that were spent, that comes up to 60% that was spent on student outcomes and adult behavior minutes. You can see that there were 4 trustees that were present, 4 absent, so the attendance rate for last time was 50%. You had 4 consent items and 0 that were removed, so 100% there. Goals discussed were 2, they were on target, so that's 100%, and your GPMs discussed and on target were 100% as well. And so now we are going to have Ms. Howard and Ms. Wendell come up and review the goal progress measures 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you? Good, how are you? I'm wonderful. Hope you had enjoyed your summer. I'm going to present to you Sherry's data on 1.1. This is our kindergarten reading data. We started our year at 28%. Previously, we had been doing a 20% growth, and then last year we adjusted, and we worked off of last year's numbers, which our kindergarten readiness last year was 35%, and so our goal was set off of that. Our kindergarten readiness this year came in quite a bit lower at 28%, and our final goal was for this year to be 56%. We did not reach that. We did have a substantial gain, but we only went to 50%. So again, that is it's a 22% gain, but because our kindergarten readiness came in much lower this year, we had our work cut out for us. We didn't quite make that. And do you have any questions on the reading? Sticking to the script here, going right on it. 2.1 is for math, and for our shared campus. Again, this year we came in lower with kindergarten readiness on math as well, at 6%, and we did meet our annual target. Our annual target was 30%. For this year, we did end up at 38% overall. So not the numbers that we wanted to see, but we are still making growth and downward path. So, any questions about the report?
Quick question on 1.1. So that's substantial growth from 28 to 50. Well, do you think there were any big key factors that were going into? I know our kinder readiness is low. I know we're partnering with pre-Ks to try to get that up. When do you think we'll start seeing if that is, will those students be in the district next year for kinder? And then how many of those students, and what do you?
It's a great question. So with our partnerships, we had 1 student at one partnership, and I think we had 3 at another. There is the mobility there because one of the families, they remain there instead of enrolling at Sherry because they are a migratory family. They work with living farms. And so I don't anticipate, they said that the job is done, they're gone. And then one of the others actually did re-enroll with Sherry before the end of the year. We got that one back. So there are only a couple of those out there, but we do anticipate those pre-K students coming to Sherry. We have been in communication with the families. Ms. Essenbaum, our instructional coach, was phenomenal. She made at minimum monthly visits to the campuses that we are partnered with. And we did meet with the families as well and just kind of build that relationship out. So we do anticipate those kiddos coming to us. And I do think that, we saw their program and we're working with them. It's sound programming. They are doing a good job. Both of the teachers were very receptive to instruction, but also open and asking questions. How can we do this? What does this look like? What do they need? And so I do feel like that partnership has been very valuable. As far as what impacted this, our kiddos that were in kindergarten, I know I reported that in March about our pre-K situation. And last year, we lost all of our kinder paras. We had no support, and we were having to pull, when we were understaffed, we had to pull to get classes covered. And so our pre-K classrooms then were understaffed because we were pulling from there. We see the error of our ways, and now we're going to split classes this year. Because we actually hurt kinder this the next year because of that. So what we're looking at is just our staffing situation that has improved this year. With our HQIM coming in, we had to make some adjustments, and part of those adjustments were restaffing for kindergarten because of the HQIM expectation. So I do anticipate that things are going to pick up this year, but we did kind of see this coming, just as far as the inability to control what's going on, with that situation. And we all know that we're in a budget shortfall and we have to do what we have to do. We just want to keep it from hitting our kids. And I think what happened is our shortfall, the unintended consequence was it hurt scores on our kids.
Yeah,
So,
one of the good things is that title is going to be picking up that extra support, so it still get the local budget there to help with that piece.
Yes. So they did some amazing things over here and worked with it so that we diverted a majority of our title money to get some additional staff in here to support us so that the instruction can be up. Plus, we're going into the new year with the HQIM, and we really don't know a lot about what that's going to look like, but we do know that we are going to need instructional support there. And so between Mr. Townsend and Ms. Rawlings, they've made that happen.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there any other questions in regards to Sherry? Thank you, ma'am, I appreciate it.
Mr. Spider-Man, I'm still working on talking slower and not as fast, I promise. I never did want you to live that down. Okay. Anyways, good evening. Thank you for letting us be here again. It's a true honor and a privilege always to celebrate our staff and our students, but we have a lot of great things happening. We have areas that we need to excel and grow on, but always, I can't do it without my leadership team. We can't do it definitely without my teachers, so I am very thankful the ones that are here in town were able to come and join us, and I'll highlight them in just a few minutes. So the first goal we're going to look at is our first grade reading goal, which is our 1.2. And just kind of going over that, so we have our 20% increase that we want to meet every year. So by looking at this for this year, our beginning of the year, we did begin with 28% of our students meeting or exceeding the expectations, which gave us a whole goal of 48%. Thrilled that we surpassed that goal. The first grade reading group ended the year with 55%, which is amazing. I also like to note that, every single demographic and subpopulation had a lot of meaningful growth and success. If you look at that, also our African American population, they excelled by far, showing the most significant progress this school year by an incredible 39% overall. So very, very proud of all the students, but also our African American. And so we always want to celebrate that. But when we're looking at our LSG goal for 1.2, our LSG goal for this year was to get to 40%. So again, first grade reading killed it with 55%. So it's an amazing job to them. It's pretty impressive with that 55%. So great job, first grade reading. And we have Ms. Hudson here. Any questions about 1.2?
So I noticed that on 1.1, I almost asked a question, but I think it's relevant here. What's the difference? How do we reach the African American community going into pre-K versus leaving pre-K and going into first? Because you did a phenomenal job catching them up, but they're not coming. It doesn't seem like in the special education and the English bilingual, it seems like we have three populations that aren't being served until they get to us.
And not really technically either, but I will say, because my campus starts the earliest of all 3 elementary, I can ask my staff to stay for after-school tutorials, whereas my staff, we get out at 3:20, technically they're all contract, we stay like 3:50. Whereas Ms. Howard's campus, they don't get out till 3:40, technically they're not done till 4:10. It's really hard to ask teachers to stay an hour after, especially with kids in school and extracurriculars, so I will say that is an advantage to us. But we are trying, we have open houses scheduled, we're doing everything, we're sending home books, we're using so much of our title money to put literacy in their homes, but we can't be at home to help them utilize it and everything, so we can keep giving them all these resources and everything, but it's up to parents at some point. I know that Mr. Brooks and I have talked several times about just getting out in the neighborhoods, both of us have bounced ideas, and Alan and everything, we've talked about different things, we just haven't been able to actually get into the different neighborhoods and do it. We talked about doing a hot dog, like getting all the campuses, all 5 campus principal admin teams together, just getting them involved, but that's where it starts, is we have to build that relationship. Some of them, they still are scared of teachers, they're scared of schools, they might have had a bad experience, we just have to figure out how to break that barrier, but. Our literacy helps. Our literacy night is always a bang, and that we bring in Mr. Robinson from Houston and everything, and luckily he is African American, so a lot of our families do relate better to him than to me, but that's why I'm thankful that Ms. Allen's a part of our admin team too, because sometimes if they don't trust me, they do trust her.
Yeah, I did a phenomenal job.
It is, but it is, the time, it's hard, and asking teachers to stay after that late is hard.
Can I comment on that specifically? That as far as reaching the community, that we have worked with Rolanda Davis, who is the Housing Authority Director, and actually held an educational academic night there, trying to draw in the community, and we had 2 people show up. And we were feeding them and playing games. It is, and she has told us how hard it is to reach the community. There is a huge trust factor here. We've talked to Val Ragland at Discovering Minds. She has offered to give gas gift cards for gas for them to come. The parents are coming, and all it was stay from 5 to 5:30. You're picking your kid up anyway, and she could not get them to do it. So we are having a huge issue reaching into parts of the community, and we have lots of conversations trying to brainstorm ways to do that. And
How are you trying to reach them? What vehicle are you using? Like word of mouth, calls to the house?
The event that Sherry held over at the community center, we sent out, she actually sent out for us, and then we sent out to everyone within a 10-block radius that had kids in schools, because we can see all that through our Skyward system. And so they were all invited.
Well, for me, it just sounds like communication is a problem. We're not reaching a few.
And that very well could be. Our parent nights, we also don't have a lot of participation there. And I would love to sit and visit with you about ways that we can increase that, because that has been one of our huge goals, is to increase the participation.
I can also suggest something.
I would love that.
So, yeah, we'll work on
You can find me at Cherry almost every day except for tomorrow.
We'll work on that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Our part of the work we're doing, growth is showing, so we just have to find a vehicle or avenue to travel to get the word out.
Yes.
To the masses, opposed to.
And I will say, I do also think I have a little bit of an upper hand than a couple of the principals, just being that Ms. Cummings has been here the longest as far as the principals, and then I'm after her, but also just the fact that I graduated from here as well and have a lot of different involvement and everything. But also we've looked into a lot of great resources, just like we were talking about Mr. Robinson from Scholastic. He brings 5 laptops. He brings $500 worth of gift cards. He brings Frenchie's chicken for all. Last year we had 800 people. We had 800 people show up for this. I didn't pay a dime. I don't pay for him. I don't pay for anything. Every child goes home with at least 2 Scholastic books, but it's just over time you have to build those connections and resources, and luckily, we have been able to.
Is that something that, I don't know if the conversation's been had, or is that something that we could offer to all and do a bigger scale, or I know it's very targeted
Because it's United Way and they get their funding, He said since he's been committed to us was the reason and everything.
Okay.
The one year we didn't. We did, Lisa, were you here yet? It was the year before Lisa came. We did invite Cherry, and so we combined it, but then we didn't have much turnout from Cherry. It was majority of us, but
Okay.
anyways, we can go back to the drawing board and keep working. And I would really like to see some of the things that Mr. Brooks has talked about in the neighborhoods. I'd love to see some of that come to fruition. But we can do it together. All right, so moving on to 1.3. Okay, now this is where I need to confetti, guys, because this team, second grade ELAR, has not met the goal since we started LSG. We've never met this goal. So Ms. Harvey's here, I'm representing her team today. And so their team, again, we did a couple things different this year, but they went from 38 to 61% for our 20% goal. That's a lot to celebrate, but then also for our LSG goal, we did need to be at 62. We missed it by 1 point, but we're still gonna celebrate because we were at 61 versus the 62. We're still very, very, very proud of them and resilience. Some of the things we did different this year was, I will also brag, Ms. Harvey came to us from another district. She had taken the leave of absence, kind of burned out, came, found her home, and thrived. And Mr. Brock, if you want to talk now, we're in our TAA, and I've got a brag on this. You want to brag about if this would have been our capture year, where Ms. Harvey would have been.
So we ran our numbers, and it's all based on growth for ELAR CIA, and the teachers fall into those categories. I'll talk about that. So Ms. Harvey would have been our master teacher at Lady Roberts.
I'm very, very proud. So second grade ELAR, they're rocking it and everything, and so we're super excited to see where we're taking with this new curriculum this upcoming year for H2IF. Any questions about second grade reading? All right, moving on to our math team, our first grade math. I know a couple of our teachers are at one of our bilingual conferences, so they weren't here to make it this evening, but the beginning of their data, also, we have to celebrate their growth as they started the year at 21. They more than doubled their performance, ending the year at 54%. Again, every demographic and sub-pop showed improvement, with especially in our African Americans showed 45% growth, but 1% behind them with 44 was our emergent bilinguals. And I'm going to give a lot of that kudos to Ms. Barrera. She's one of our core. We only have 2 certified bilingual teachers, even though technically we need 4. We're always hunting. Ms. Crosshoff always has it on the job post that we're trying everything, but Ms. Barrera is a huge asset to her team and to the students. So proud of the growth that they showed. It's also very worth celebrating our special ed students. Also in the first grade math, they had a 20% increase as well. So that kind of progress and everything goes kudos to the teachers and everything that they are doing. And not just the teachers, I have to make sure we give a shout out to all of our intervention teachers and also like Mr. Brock leading all of the PLCs, but then also our special teachers. They all do intervention 4 days a week. They do intervention for reading and they do intervention for math, so it takes a team effort to do that as well. And then looking at the LSG goal for first grade math, our LSG goal was set to be at 34% for this August, and we exceeded that with the 54%. So again, they mastered that goal. So great job for first grade math. This is the one that kind of hits hard because this is the first time that we have not met our goal in second grade math, and I'm kind of going to explain that a little bit. So while we didn't meet our goal, we did fall short of our target, but with that being said, there was still growth in all the sub-pops and demographics, but definitely want to expect more. We began the year with 14%. Our team only got to 28%, so we had definitely got together. Mr. Brock and Sal and I had talked and looked at different things and just trying to refocus and get us reset. But there are some things that we know were the benefiting factors of this. One of them was we started the year with a long-term sub who was very absent, and so we made the decision at Thanksgiving to move a teacher to self-contained. That teacher has never even taught. So first of all, we lost quite a bit of instruction when that long-term sub wasn't here. And then second, when we did move that teacher to self-contained, it was her first time teaching second grade math. So then we have a whole other thing, going us. And then I will say we had a teacher move down from 4th grade to 2nd grade. She cares more about that. She knows what the Miss Flores needs in 4th grade. And that's what she was set on. So y'all know that the M class is the foundational skills. Miss Davis, she didn't care about, she wanted to get them ready for Miss Flores' campus. And so you would see that she put a lot more emphasis and focus on that. That being said, we're changing our goals this next year for math. We are going for TIA, we are going with full implementation of the TEAS. Mr. Brock and our team leader sat down, they used all the STAR, that's the one tool that we use.
We used the table that shows, the frequency table that shows how many times the different teams are tested.
And literally, we all sat in a room, we wrote down how many questions were in third grade, we just spiraled backwards, we looked at all the third grade TEAS and how many times it was tested, and we exactly mimicked that for second grade, then we did the same thing for second grade to first grade. So this upcoming year, while they will have to still do in-class because it is mandated by the state, for TIA, and hopefully for the data that I would present to y'all, we'll be looking at the actual TEAS, so they're actually being better prepared for Ms. Flores' campus. So they did not meet their 20% goal, and then when we look at their LSG goal, they missed that one by 11%. And again, it's really hard to look at this because that team has been together, they worked hard and everything. And like, for example, Ms. Koenig, she did meet her goal, but those teachers, a couple teachers that did meet their goal, and then I have teachers that didn't. It's really hard for the couple that did to pull the weight of the others. So definitely some more planning, some more design, some more coaching, and just super excited to see where this next year goes. So just looking ahead, just getting stronger and working better together. Any questions about secondary now? Again, huge kudos to my leadership team. Teachers can't do it without them.
Dad, I think the best part is, you know, it's summertime, you can tell they've already been funded and they're already preparing for the next school year, so, great job. Okay, the superintendent, do you have any reflections on things that you have heard for that part?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I wanted to point out is, you know, even though on those pre-K partners, that was the whole part of the point of the initiatives to get them before they come. Even though the ones that qualify for dual enrollment are small, that support affects everybody who's there, right? So it may not be that they're dually enrolled with us, but all of the kids that are at that daycare are getting the benefit of that support from the campuses. So I just want to highlight that it's still, that benefit is still going to be there, they may not be dually enrolled. So that's the good part about it. And if we can, if more of the area daycares do get that Rising Star designation, then we'll be able to partner with them and expand, and then it's just going to take time for them to achieve that piece and then us be able to partner with them. But I just want to point that out because I think it's pretty important.
I am happy to be here today. I want to just tell you real quick that the energy and the enthusiasm is really exciting. I shared with Kelly on the drive over. I started my career here 30 years ago at Pierce Primary School. So very happy to be here tonight in different capacity. So to keep the momentum going, we're going to look at your self-evaluation tool, the integrity instrument, and reflect on how you guys feel about how you're doing, the progress you're making, celebrating the successes, and even looking at future aspirations of how we can move the needle there. So looking at vision and goals, the first one, the board has adopted student outcomes and goals. If you'll remember, we're going to read this from left to right. Take a few minutes to study that, and let's talk about where you feel like you fall as a board with your vision and goals one. That we're at least there. Is there anything that we'd like to focus on going forward to get you to the master's level?
We've done a lot of work at Broad Community Leadership. I know it's gone back and forth on, are we there? And then at one point we almost agreed we were, and then I don't know if we've done anything in that sense in a while, but good opportunity coming into the new school year to start looking at that as well.
I think that is a commonality between most boards of just the broad community ownership. With the start of school coming up, I'm sure there's going to be opportunities for events and activities that you can get the word out and participate, share the news about Lone Star governments to help further that. So are we good to move on to two?
Yes.
Okay, visions of goal 2, the board has adopted goal progress measures, GPMs, aligned to each student outcome goal. So again, let's look at these and see where we feel like you are. until it meets again. And I'm going to assume that our community is going to be a recurring thing here, so, okay. The number 3 goal is the board has adopted constraints. On goal 4 then, the board has adopted superintendent constraint progress measures or CPMs. So let's look at those. Anything but very consistent, right? All right. So switching from our GPMs or the goals here, let's go ahead and look at the progress and accountability, starting with 1, the board invests at least half of its time to improving student outcomes, and that is your progress, the time tracker. So we don't have the past data on that, but I'm sure you all know how many you fall consistently. 60% last month was awesome.
We have no idea, Tony tells us.
I
If
think
I
if I
just go
recall,
like 40.
if I recall, we've had a couple meetings in the past that have dipped below that 50% mark
Enough that the 60 wouldn't offset that. Average, do you think?
on average. I think.
That 60 was a short meeting. We heard that thing.
That was not typical there.
That was a great meeting.
So where do you think we fall then?
Definitely
Needs
Definitely what?
meets.
Yeah.
Needs
I don't think we got the max.
I don't
Everyone agrees there?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So progress and accountability 2, the board evaluates but does not interfere with progress toward improving student outcomes.
So we don't get masters. That's a superintendent evaluation.
Sometimes that's the best way to look at the chart too.
Yeah.
You know, you have to step back one. Let's just see. So are we
I think
in
we're-
needs again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or the next one, systems and processes. Actually, the board operates in a way that allows the superintendent to accomplish the vision.
Our meeting then,
We don't have any asset that no, we're not. With Tony's departure and Debbie not being available today,
Yeah, I think we're probably with, I think in June alone, we had 44 meetings. Which we made working through. I don't think we had, I mean, on average, we probably had 3. Some of our meetings lasted longer.
I agree.
I think we're probably at meetings.
advocacy and engagement, the board promotes the vision.
Oh, we haven't, well, we did the December. What's that called?
Virtual.
The virtual, yeah,
The town hall.
town hall, that's what it's
Was
called.
that this year? 'Cause I watched that.
That was in
So,
December.
okay.
Well, was that
But
count?
it says.
Yes, I would
Oh, yes.
count that is,
Oh, we're outside of 6 months, so,
But we get the 12-month on approaches.
yeah. So we'll do approaches.
Great tradition here. And the final one then is synergy and teamwork. The board works collaboratively and with the superintendent to lead toward the vision.
We're not in masters.
Oh, we got a little store, we got a new board.
Yeah. And we're not at meets,
So we attended.
just attendance.
Did we at least get 70% of the time?
No. Sorry.
We're gonna go compare the folks.
Yeah, I think we're,
70.
yeah. I think we're below,
Once we're in,
I think so.
So this area is the attendance center.
It's the attendance.
yes, ma'am, is that reflecting, so as a board, have there been any kind of discussions that y'all have had with the board members in attendance or just kind of?
There's some personal things going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're aware you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's fine, I'm just making
Yes.
it think like if you haven't had discussions about attendance, because, then hey, maybe that's somewhere where we can start, especially if we're moving it forward in this next school year, like, the board's attendance, just like we have the teachers and the students, attendance is super important, so is sports, just having conversations, so we're here just to promise,
Yes.
if you will.
I understand. Thank you.
We've got a copy of this something. Or your chief.
Yes, yeah. Do you want us to sign yours? Right.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
Copy. I'm gonna give you a clean copy, so then we'll go back and see this.
So while we're doing that, the discussion items going forward would be about whether or not you need to continue doing LSG coaching.
Yes.
And that's definitely,
So, I worked with Tony and with Morris, and we felt like it was really a good point for us to engage those practices, but to move on without that. And so, but we did already establish collaboratively with the principals, a monitoring calendar for what we're going to be reporting and when to the board, and the board will make some decisions. Of course, there's a couple of, a month where maybe we don't have a report, but then that's something that the board can use, whether it's a self-evaluation or whatever it is. So we feel like it's going to be really effective. One of the other things that we talked about, Ms. Boucher, is that, of course, with the, the new law of the 3 full business days of posting, that we really like to maintain the practice that we have with LSG on posting the agendas and everything. It's a good practice, and that keeps us way out of worrying about not meeting that new expectation. So there's a number of practices that we're going to continue that are best practice. I know that the board's probably going to consider, contractor services with Region 3 for the board support, so that throughout the year they can come and help us and guide us. I think Missy may be able to do that. So I think we're on a good track. I think it served its purpose, and we definitely don't want it to go backwards, but I think we're prepared to go forward.
the tools to continue
Yes.
the framework.
Yes, and I've had many conversations with Tony about this board in particular, and he has said for quite some time that y'all are ready, you're ready for the next step, and that's really what LSD is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be written in every year constantly, so kudos to y'all for doing that.
So next month, looks like you'll be discussing GPMs 3 and 4, as well as reviewing your official start date. Is there any other questions or things for us tonight?
Thank y'all so much.
Thank y'all.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Right. Moving right along to reports. The BCISD last had a strong foundation math framework presentation.
Yeah, so everybody does that, we're good, and we kind of talked about this a little bit before. It's the same thing as last year we had done literacy framework, is what we framed out, and that was kind of a launching pad into the HPIM RLA K-5 that we're going to be implementing this year. And so the next step in that process, I don't know if you recall, but a couple of years ago, I kind of told you what my overview was going to be on how we would feel about this. We didn't want to do all of the grants at once and try to do literacy and math all at the same time. We wanted to focus on what the district's greatest need was, and it's really many districts' greatest need was literacy needs. So that's why we did that first. And then so I moved kind of fast, and so really, actually, this is, you're supposed to be framing it out now, but we did it all last spring. So it's done, and it's right there in your board book, and it's super pretty. And I will tell you, not only pretty, but the content. In fact, the TEA auditor person said this is the best one that she's seen so far. So it's good.
Good work.
Yes, but so the math team, which is comprised of team leaders from all the campuses and instructional coaches and administrators and the whole gamut. Normally, when we do a framework, we have more than what normal districts do. I like to have as much input as I can. And so they framed it out last spring, and that'll be a launching pad for beginning to look at what do we want to focus on with vertical alignment as we go into this next year. Mr. Halley will pick that up. The principals, instructional coaches, facilitators have been collaborating this last year on what that's going to look like moving into this. So this is a real launching pad. But the cool thing about this is it's all based on research-based instructional strategies, and the key things are conceptual understanding, problem solving, student engagement, and the productive struggle piece is a big piece without, not just jumping in and doing it for them, but having a productive struggle where they're not destroyed, but they're having to problem solve on their own, and then metacognition. So it's a great framework. We're looking forward to that being implemented, being at the forefront of conversations this next year. It may be a springboard for high quality instructional materials in the math realm, but that's going to be conversations with that team. One of the things that we talked about is implementing the HQIM as a heavy lift. If we'll get support, we have it coming from Region 3, and they'll be there every week with the teachers and POCs. They'll be internalizing those lessons with all of them. But one of the things that, that is a little bit different for us is that Cherry is, one teacher does all of the subjects, right? And so when you get to Roberts, you have a teacher for math, and you may have a teacher for ELA. So if we were going to implement HQIM math next year, the following year, then it would be super hard for Cherry because they're going to be in their second year of implementation for the ELAR of that, and then they're going to have to take on math. So that's one teacher. So they'll have conversations about, is it best to let Cherry go another year with ELAR before going K, and then maybe start math with 1 and up. To allow them, so we don't burn our teachers out. But anyway, just a frame of reference for you guys and a reminder of where we're going overall with that piece. They will do site visits in the fall at schools that are implementing HQM math, just like we did for the HQM ELAR, so that they can see it being implemented in the classroom and then turn around and be there the same days that the Region 3 coach is there doing those DLCs, so that they can see what that looks like for teachers and have a real good frame of reference as they start making decisions. That's it.
Are there any questions in regards to that? Thank you for your work on that. All right, moving on to item B, the delinquent tax collection reports. Hello, how are you this evening?
Doing wonderful, happy to be here.
Oh, we
Oh,
didn't.
we did do it.
I have a motion to prevail as the first time.
Oh, sorry, I forgot that.
Is there a second to the motion? Any questions? Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I always forget that we have to make it official. Make it official.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Hello, welcome.
Thank you for having me this evening. I'm Leslie Scouty with Purdue Brandon Fielder Collins and Mott. I'm your delinquent tax attorney. I want to preface the report by saying these are the delinquent, and I'm doing things on your touchscreen here, I'm so sorry. These are the delinquent taxes only. The report is actually through 2023 only. The 2024 taxes were turned over on July 1st of this year. So we did not have them in our system when we prepared the report. However, I've supplemented your report with a pie chart at the very end, which gives you a snapshot of the delinquent turnover for 2024. And you will see that the tax office did a great job. They have collected almost 98% of the school district's tax levy for the 2024 tax year, turning over only 2.35% to my firm to collect. So I'd like to start with that. That's the good news. The district does not have a delinquent tax problem. This is just a culmination of those percentages that are turned over yearly that we're working through to collect to get the district paid on those stragglers out there. But for the most part, your residents are paying their taxes on about 90% of them. So that's the good news. So by way of reminder, our services are at no cost to the district. We get paid what's called a collection penalty. So when you contract with us to collect your delinquent taxes, we get paid what's called a collection penalty. It's a statutory penalty that attaches to the account on July 1st of every year for the current year. So for example, for the 2024 tax year, on July 1, that collection penalty attached. The taxpayers received a notice in May that gave them due process or a warning that that collection penalty would attach on July 1 should their taxes still be delinquent July 1. So
that's, just by way of reminder, it's very incentivizing. If we don't collect the taxes, we don't get paid. So that helps us to be incentivized.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. This 449,778, that was missing from, that was handed over to you for this last year?
Correct,
Okay.
correct, on July 1 this year.
What is, and what is the history on collecting all of that you guys can collect all of that?
So I have some historical collection data at the end, which is gonna give you an
Okay,
idea.
all right. Sorry.
Yes, no worries, great question. But I have collection data for 2020 through 2023 that kind of shows you the trend of how that's going through the years. Absolutely, I'm happy to answer any more questions when we get there. The first pie chart I have for you in your packet is the account breakdown chart, and that gives us a bird's eye view of the delinquent roll and where everything is categorized. So it lets me know how to direct my staff, my folks that are making phone calls to taxpayers, that are doing some research. And so you'll see, looking at the chart, that 52% of the roll, and all of these charts, except for that last one, are through 2023 only. So this is 2020 through 2023 only. So you'll see the largest section at 52% is the litigation section. So this is everything in litigation from suit just being filed yesterday to ready for the next tax sale. So everything in that whole process is in this section. For that, we have action pending at 16%. So many of these are going to be your 2023 delinquencies where we have contacted the taxpayer. They're in a payment agreement, some of them. We're monitoring that payment agreement, or it's working its way into litigation if we haven't been able to come with an agreement. We're doing research, finding out if there's a lien holder, contacting that lien holder, or trying to work with the taxpayer. They tell me they have a closing date in a month. We know our system will follow up in a month, that type of thing is in the action pending section. And after that is the deferral section, and that is at 11%. Those are the taxpayers that are 65 or older or have a disability and they've elected to defer the payment of their taxes on their residence homestead. If they are entitled to that deferment, they have to get that homestead exemption with the appraisal district and then file an affidavit with the appraisal district for the deferment. Once the deferment is on the account, we cannot actively collect, we can't make phone calls or file lawsuits for good reason. However, that taxpayer at any time can make partial payments or pay off that amount. Typically, when they cease to use the property as their residence homestead, taxes would be in full. So I'm going to move along to the second pie chart. Which is the dollar range chart. So this just gives me an idea of how to direct my staff. Lets me know we work our roll top down. So we start with the highest delinquency so we can maximize our efforts for the district and be as effective as possible. So really just more of a tool for me in my office. Third chart is the tax year chart, and that gives you an idea of what percentages due for each tax year. So you'll see the 2023 taxes are at 18%, and after that they start to fall off. 16 and prior, there's actually very small amounts due for each of those tax years. We lumped them all together for ease of reading the chart. Some of the reasons for those older tax years are going to be your tax deferrals or properties that we went through the litigation process, got to tax sale, there was no bidder, it was struck off to the district. Later on in the agenda, I have one we're trying to get back on the roll out of the tax trust. So those are always available, listed on our website when they are struck off to the entity and available for private resale. And we've done a few public resales with you guys throughout the year. So sometimes we have enough interest to work get people proverbial courthouse debts now that they're done online, but trying to get people out to the courthouse to try again at purchasing them. So that's some of the reasons for those older tax years. Now, we're to the historical collection data for tax years 2020 through 2023. You'll see for the 2020 tax year, we're almost 85% collected for those. And keep in mind that those deferments and those struck off properties and all of those things are still included in this number, this base tax number. You'll see the initial base tax amount up at the top that was turned over to us, followed by the percentage through years, showing the collection trends. For 21, we are getting close to 81% collected. 22, a little over 71%, and for 2023, we are over 54% collected of what was turned over to us last July. That way, for reminder, we have tax dockets here in Bay City once a month, where we are moving along those cases that we filed. And we had a tax sale this month, and we're looking to have our next one in September. And if you're interested in following along, you can visit our website, pdfcm.com. It's on the front page. Go to the tax sale tab. There you can see whether it's tax sale listed. On the homepage, you can sign up for automated email updates at the bottom of the homepage. And then also on that tax sale tab, you can visit the resale tab, select category county, and see what's in the tax trucks as well. And we have a blank bid and information on how to submit. Any questions? Any questions?
Thank you so much. I much appreciate it.
Absolutely, reach out anytime if y'all should have any questions.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Tactical, is such a joyful person.
I know. All right, moving on to item C, budget forecast.
So before we get into this, we just wanted to frame things out for you. The next thing will be the compensation piece. But we want to give you guys a good frame of reference where we believe that we're going to be at with whatever new revenue we have, which is not very much, but then also a little bit if we look at disaster funds and beta versus data doesn't pass. So you guys have a good idea of what's that trajectory for the next 2 years. And Mr. Gomez explained to you, it's purely estimates, everything's estimates, right? But to give you an idea so that you can make an informed decision on compensation. Mr. Gomez?
Yes, sir. All right, so as Mr. Thomas said, this is the fund balance projections with House Bill 2 accounted for. As a reminder, where we left off last month, 2025-26 adopted a deficit budget of negative $6.2 million. That was under current law pre House Bill 2. Taking a look at that, you look at where we're at, projected to be, of course, as unaudited for 24-25, projected fund balance is $4.4 million. You got a deficit to that, and under what was current law, we would have been solvent for this year at negative 1.8. So the path forward is going to be House Bill 2. We're going to look at two different models, one with property insurance variation and one without. So a lot of that is because a lot of the data still hasn't been made available by the state. They put it out there based on how they're going to calculate the property insurance variation, but up until this point, there's nothing concrete. So as you guys have heard me speak about, I use Omar templates to project revenue throughout the year, just as every other school district in the state does. I actually reached out to Omar Garcia himself, and he reached out and replied very quickly, just to mention that he hasn't put that into his models yet into his template because that data was not available. It still hasn't been made available. It was just recently, I think it was Friday, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Townsend did a to the administrator address came out from TEA, kind of backing up some of the calculations that we're seeing in the Casey summary finance template, but that template is still not even a month old yet. So they are looking to put more templates out of Tasbo, Casey, for the inevitability when Mr. Garcia is no longer building the template. So the path forward, once again, as Mr. Townsend mentioned, these estimated figures shown will 100% change because they're estimates based on data that we have available. House Bill 2 is still being interpreted, and we're just taking everything we can from the legislation. Mr. Townsend quoted that to kind of just drink from fire hose. That's kind of what it's like. The fund balance projections that will be shown, we're going to show the unassigned fund balance, meaning that's what's available. Anything that's tied up is going to be in assets or the state share of the M&O revenues has decreased due to estimated property value showing extreme growth, 36% at the current 100K homestead exemption. But it doesn't take into account the proposed 140,000 homestead exemption that is expected to pass in November when it's put on the ballot, which would increase the state share due to home harvest. The property insurance variation calculation data like I mentioned, hasn't been made available, so we're using those estimates based off the low Casey model, trying to be as conservative as we can with those. So the new revenue that the district will receive is not tied to some allotments in this crosstalk will speak to here in a moment, which are the TRA, the SSRA, and the allotment for basic costs or the ABC allotment. They were excluded because their revenue that their use is already either defined in statute or being restricted for expenditures that are not in this budget. So those are the facts. These are the assumptions that we're going to use to maintain those calculations. The deficit, I will keep that at -6.2 per year. Of course, as we see the numbers, that's going to show an indication that that is going to have to change. Or for the sake of just keeping that model all the way throughout, that's what we're going to keep there. The state, and we're also assuming the state will continue funding the property insurance variation. There is, examples of in the state history of failure to fund initiatives from one session to the next. So in between sessions, the funding does fall off. An example that would be the form of the transition grant. I think it was in 2019, that was enacted to transition districts from one model of revenue to another. But at a certain point, it just got to the point where I believe the state figured out that they just couldn't afford that transition grant. And so some of the districts, us being one of them, stopped receiving funding from that pretty early on. The estimated value that we're going to use for the property insurance variation is $1.3 million. And then the other assumption that we're going to use is that student numbers and data are going to remain constant. Attendance has been a big initiative this year, and we saw the results of that. So, that yielded great results for the district, but we also have to take into account that enrollment hasn't been defined. So the updated 25-26 fund balance projection with House Bill 2 accounted for it. Just a reminder, we're looking at a -1.8 that was adopted under House Bill 2. So that's going to be your starting line right here at the top, the black row. The -1.8, and then I have it with the property insurance variation excluded on the left and then included on the right. So without the property insurance variation, all we're getting from House Bill 2, taking the TRA, the SSRA, the ABC allotments out, House Bill 2 is only generating about $50,000 in new revenue. So we're expecting the state to come and bail us out if they're not. Now the nice benefit of that is if the calculations hold up and if the data holds true, then we should see hopefully a max of almost 1.3 or $1.4 million because the property insurance variation is estimated at 1.3. We are planning on taking disaster pennies, which right now all 12 would yield $3.6 million in a one-time revenue payment to the district. So 25-26, we calculated with those figures with the property insurance variation excluded is going to be 1.8 on the left and then 3.1 on the right. So we're going to look ahead, 26-27, disaster pennies go away, and the district puts, publishes a Vader, runs a Vader, and puts it in the hands of the voters to decide, whether or not they're going to give or let the district retain those 12 pennies. So you take that previous figure that we had of the 1.8 and 3.1, slide those over the top. We're maintaining the -$6.2 million deficit, maintaining that we're going to receive that $50,000 with property insurance valuation excluded, and the 1.3, almost, 1.3 and a half, the property insurance variation included. We also take into account that Rome America has an estimated payment of 1.8 in its first year coming on. With the 313 agreement, then you're looking at the figures here. If the Vader fails, you're insolvent in both sides. You're either in the negative again, worse off than we were before House Bill 2 this year, or hoping to break even. So, once again, stressing the importance of the Vader. The Vader will bring on that $3.6 million that the district can retain and continue to receive if the voters approve it. So, with that $3.6 million brought in, you're going to see either a fund balance of 1.1 or 3.7. Ultimately, this just speaks to the importance of not only the Vader, but just once again, looking at it, seeing the adjustments need to be made. Of course, one thing that we talked about in previous meetings and such was using this year the disaster pennies to perhaps go out for an efficiency audit, see where the district could be more efficient in certain areas and make the adjustments necessary to start evaluating and bringing that deficit figure of 6.2 down to adjust so that as you bring that deficit down, the overall projected fund balance should be going up. I know that was pretty quick, but I just wanted to kind of, and it's a lot of numbers, but if anybody has any questions, I can always jump back. But overall, it was mostly just to show this is where we're going to be now to House Bill 2. We have some estimated revenues, you know, the disaster payments are gonna yield, and then once again, show the influence of the bidder.
Questions?
Is there any clarifying questions on projection of where we're projecting to end up? Because that's an important piece for you when you make a decision on the compensation. I think the bottom line is that, you know, the vendor's gonna be extremely important. It's gotta pass. And so if it doesn't, then we're gonna have, you know, a bunch of feedback where we started. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to take the time to make sure that we do everything we can to get it to pass. But I think that when we look at this, if you look at the property insurance, you know, it's going to happen. It's just what is the calculation? But the good thing is, like Mr. Gomez said, is that we were very hesitant to even entertain it at all because EA had not released how they were going to calculate. But then when they did last week, it did coincide with the calculations that OKC had been using to provide estimates. So feel kind of good about it, but how long it lasts is uncertain. And then remember again, the reason that he didn't take you to 27, 28 is when we get to the end of 26, 27, that's a whole other legislative year. So that could be to the good or it could not. We saw this was supposed to be a big one for us, and it was for the teachers, and that's a huge blessing. But for the district itself and operating, not necessary. So some things to take into consideration as you consider what this cross-off has options for. Do you have any other questions for Mr. Gomez?
Well, just quick, just for a number, what's the number that we're looking from the voters that they?
It's a super majority, 60%. Yes, sir.
Which will put us,
That'll, if 60% vote yes for us to keep the pennies, then we should continue to generate the $3.6 million.
that's the goal.
That's the goal, yes. Because we're gonna take that with the disaster, penny adoption, we adopt the tax rate in August. And then our goal is to keep that revenue. The only way to keep it after that year is if they say we can.
Just thinking about it, next year would be all voters, because you know, yeah, that's from midterm.
Yeah. And that's one of the things.
So that will bring the voters out.
It will, and so when we met with the potential beta consultants that we talked about, they pointed that out. You know, initially, they were really pushing for us to do the beta this November because it'll be a smaller turnout and easier to pinpoint that group of voters that normally goes away.
Who would a campaign cost?
They sent a proposal, and it's about 150 to 200,000, but their track record is great.
So 200,000 to get 3.6 million. I mean, that's just.
Yeah.
Correct, and that's at the property value. These values are estimated too high. Like I mentioned, we're showing 36% growth. I'm very skeptical of that, but if I wanted to keep in line, then I would go way overestimate the state aid. I didn't want to promise more state aid than
Yes, the fund balance goes up from 25, 26, 26, 27, assuming that we get disaster pennies and the Vader passes.
Yes, sir.
Does that mean the budget becomes balanced at that point? Is there stuff falling off?
Or so, just so I can look back at it. So you'll have that 1.8 to 3.1 at the end of 25, 26 with disaster. And your estimate for data passes, that's our starting point.
Can you ask your question
So-
again, James? Sorry.
On the summary, 24, 25, the projected fund balance, let's just say the property insurance variation included on all of them. We have a fund balance of 4.4 million now.
Okay.
At the end of 25, 26, assuming property insurance variation and assuming we do the disaster pennies, which is essentially guaranteed, right? Our fund balance falls to 3.1.
Yes, sir.
And then at the end of 26-27, again, in the same column, insurance variation included. So now we're on evador passes, which is the same money as the disaster payment, right, 3.6?
Correct.
But now, instead of going down 1.3 million, we go up 600.
Correct, and you're gonna see that's because of the estimated thing from the Roman America.
Okay, so Rome is in there.
Rome's gonna be coming in.
But then, so we go into the, all things staying the same, we go into the next year, we don't have that additional Rome money, now we're back to negative again. So this thing implodes on itself unless something changes.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And that's one of the prime reasons that we have got to do an efficiency audit. We can't just sit. There are gonna have to be changes. Or it will continue to go down, whether or not we get paid or not. And so with the efficiency audit, the goal would be to identify what's the biggest bang for our buck with the least effect possible to students, right? And so that's how we're gonna go about it. I'm going to suggest that we go about doing it, because we can sit around and we can pick apart stuff all the time, but when you get somebody like OKC coming in, and give you an efficiency audit, you can have any independent auditor do that. But with somebody who's in the school business, then they have more of a lens to be able to suggest things that may not have as great an effect on your students and your teachers.
I think one of the things that keeps coming up, and it's in this PowerPoint well, it's on my page 49, I don't know if it would be up there. It's the enrollment has been declining. So I know the principals and the schools and admin did so much work on attendance this year. And it was fantastic, and you did what you need, like you proved that what you were doing was working. But how do we get those students back that are leaving to go to other districts how do we pull those kids back in? What is it that is keeping them from staying in our district, number one? And when I go out and talk to parents that do take their kids and say, I'm taking my kid out and I'm putting them in an ABC school or whatever, most of the time it's due to behavior. And so when you start looking at behavior, I then go to what are we doing in our ISS? What are we doing in our DAP? Are those procedures and policies in those areas, are they set and are they enforced? I don't know. So that's where I keep going back is we're going to continue to do the attendance stuff and that will continue to rise. But until we get that declining attendance back up, we're spinning our wheels. And so what is the, and principals, Mr. Thompson, y'all may know, but what is keeping those kids from coming back to Bay City ISD? Is it education? Is it behavior? We talk about all the great things that we're doing educationally and the things that we're offering. There's a missing link somewhere that we're not, that's what I keep coming back to is what is that?
So I would like to share that I have been also just trying to meet with the CFO who will speak to me.
Yeah.
Try to figure out, pick their brain and see what's going on. One of them even allowed me to, they ran our numbers on forecast 5. So I asked, okay, compare us to like school districts that have similar windows, easy ones to pick, to look at specifically are going to be districts like they're right here in our district because we did put in different,
right.
I like districts because of size,
right.
and such like that. So districts that have them compared to World Campbell, Calhoun, and Beaver. And they're all experiencing the same loss of students. So it seems to be a trend that's not isolated to a city specifically, but it's isolated at mid-sized districts like ours. So they're also seeing that same departure, and we're trying to figure out, okay, where are they going? I can't speak to where they're going because I don't, not get my hands on that data. But perhaps they're going to larger metropolitan areas. I'm not quite sure.
Or they're going to smaller districts, is really where they're going. And I talked to a lot of them, and 1 or 2 years out, they're wanting to come back because it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows over there. The behavioral problems exist over there just as much as they exist here. They're just not broadcast to the public as better. I mean, there are weapons in other districts in our area. There's fights and there's all this stuff going on. The community's not beating them up over it and get beat up pretty bad on it. So
and that really is the difference because I've worked almost all of Highway 35 except for Palacios. And kids are the same no matter what school you go to. Now the perception is something different, of the kids and the issues that exist in those schools. So I'm gonna tell you something, you walk in to any one of our schools, and when classes are in session, it's quiet. It's not like you're going in and stuff just falling off the walls and thinking, that's not happening. That's a misperception. Our principals and our teachers are doing an amazing job. Now, we are a larger district, so by virtue, we're gonna have a larger percentage. There's always that one little piece that are the recurring ones. But by virtue, we're gonna have more of that. But I think you're very right. In fact, I know you're right. The biggest thing of people, if they do leave, everybody's experiencing decline enrollment. That started with COVID. We haven't gotten our kids back, and that's a fact, statewide. But the biggest piece is we, our teachers and us and the community are our greatest enemy in how we portray our district. And it's all based on hearsay. And if somebody says something, they just throw it out there and now it's already fact. I left because of blah, blah. Okay, we'll give you the specific incident so that we can address it. That's not coming, right? Or it does and we fix it. But I think the perception is something different than what the reality is, you know? I really do. And it is a statewide issue, enrollment everywhere. And pre-COVID numbers on attendance and enrollment, and I don't know where they went, you know, they're saying they're going homeschool, but they're not really doing homeschool, you know, I don't know.
What about programs for like high schools? Reach out to dropouts. We actually go knock on doors. Find out what can we do to bring this 16, 17, 15-year-old back into high school.
Right, and that's something that we actually can track is the leaver data.
No. I mean, the data is fine. I'm talking about action. We set up a date. We go, we knock on doors. We talk to these parents, we talk to these students, see if we can, I mean, the numbers may be small, maybe 10, but it may be 100.
So that's actually the process that the schools have to do at the end and the beginning of each year, and they're called leavers. So if they don't show back up, then it's our responsibility to track where they're at.
Okay.
And if you can't find, so like if a student leaves here and they go to, they have like, or any public school district, then they will be put into the system and we'll be able to see that they're at that school district. So they don't count as a dropout or anything. But anybody who doesn't, we can't account for. We have to track them down. The biggest part is actually finding them. I mean, they'll go and they'll look and they'll, you know, where's the last address? Where are they? Because if we don't, then, I mean, they serve as a dropout, right?
Right.
And we don't want dropouts. We don't want that on our percentage or anything. So that is part of the process.
I mean, we can make it an event. I'm talking to get it done. I mean, let's get out there. Let's find these kids. I mean, let's locate the last location and knock on that door.
And that's
see if we can go to the next door. I mean, it doesn't have to be a staff here or a staff. It could be the school board can walk. Knock on doors. I mean, we can set in and throw things out, but if we're not going to, you know, take action with it, it's just an idea.
Right.
An idea will go away when you wake up. I mean, really,
I just want to add, like, even like first and second grade kids, you know, once we have them on our roster, let's say they attended Cherry last year and they're on our roster, every kid that doesn't show up to meet the teacher night or whatever, our teachers and our parent liaison are calling every single one and getting an answer of where they are, if they moved or whatnot. And then we don't stop there. Then our parent liaison's position after that is to go to the home visits, and they are, Mr. Eden, they're going to the houses, they're taking materials like they're supposed, yeah. But I mean, even first and second grade, we're trying to figure out where they are before they fall off the road.
And a lot of times it's the family structure that's kind of going around in circles and the baby's caught in that whirlpool. But we gotta be the safety line to pull them out of that and get them back into these institutions, school. We have to formulate a plan other than.
So in that vein and in that lane, I know we have parent liaisons at every campus. Every campus currently has one, correct? And then I know we have Mr. Brooks working over kind of doing all the things. Mr. Brooks, is there anything in that you're like, okay, if this is the one thing that we really need help on, or we need this going and knocking, or something to pull these students in? I know it's about what we talked earlier in LSG with Marissa. It's about building the relationships to get these people to trust in our community that we really do have their best interests at heart and their kids' best interests. So do you?
At this point, I'll be honest with the board and everyone here, I have not researched or tracked down any. That has not been something that has been coming up. When I asked about it, it is just not something that we have paid a whole lot of attention to. We pay a lot of attention to our truants. We're not paying attention to that legalness. And that is something that I've talked with the liaison about, especially my liaison at high school, working with Ms. Mosier. We work to try to get those kids off that 98 leader code, which is, you know, the dropout. But it hasn't been something that we have really honed in and really tried to get that number down. Right, I'm not sure what our number is right now when it comes to the overall dropout percentage, but that is something that I, in my past experience, we have focused on, because that is something that TEA eventually starts to come in and starts to beat us on having a high percentage of dropout. So, yes, I would love to, you know, talk with the liaison, and we can take that role on. Yes, we're knocking on doors now, you know, improving the attendance and helping kids get to school, but we can start focusing on those students that are not enrolled in. If they leave BCISD, there is a failure to enroll charge that could be applied to those parents if they don't take their student to another school. And that is something that we can look at starting here when we come back in July, August.
I think that kind of goes along the lines of what you're.
Yeah, I think the enrollment plan needs to be a little more complex than, you know, that there's not really one solution that's gonna solve it all, because, you know, we almost left the district when we moved here, because everybody said, oh, you gotta be over here, smaller school sizes, and so we started exploring that, and my neighbor looked me in the eye and said, James, you freaking crazy. Basically, ISD is where your kids need to be. They're not gonna get served better anywhere else, because we have this and this and this and this, and Mrs. Pulver was pivotal in us staying in the district and me becoming a champion of the district and actually joining the board to improve the messaging on the district. And so it comes down to messaging, it comes down to the kids leaving and why did you leave and let's get them back, and it comes down to the kids dropping out and let's get them back, and it comes down to truancy and let's get them in school. And so I think it just needs, we almost need an enrollment plan that's comprehensive, that has various stakeholders inputting different data into it. It's maybe something we can get a committee from the board and join some of the administrative staff, get the teachers involved and the liaisons involved, and some community staff members in. I think something like that, you know, to try and increase our enrollment would be good.
And if I may, I mean, that does make a whole lot of sense. If we were to start knocking on doors, not just the liaisons, but campus staff, board members, that lets that parent know that your child is important to us. We want to provide your child with the best education possible. We understand that education changes the family dynamic. So we want you to bring your child here. Give us that opportunity, not only to educate your child here in this building, but to get them to be a productive citizen when they go off to college and come back to our community and pay it back, right? I was telling the kids the other day, go get it and bring it back. Go off to college, do those wonderful things, but come back and help this community grow. That is something that we all should do. We all take stake in that. Not just Mr. Townsend or Ms. Westmore, but that needs to be all of us. Let's all get out and knock on the door and let your child is important to us. When we're sitting in the house, let's tell them who's the most important person in this room. And we wanted to challenge you. It's you coming into our building, giving us an opportunity to educate. That is where we want to change this dynamic and get Bay City up to the greatness of where it wants.
Right, anything else on that portion? I know that's a little off for fund balance, and I think it plays in because it's a big portion. We don't have the students.
You started.
I did start it because I think it's a conversation that needs to happen. So it's on the thing.
I think it's a great conversation.
All right. Any other fund balance before we move into compensation real quick?
We can start on something else. I may have new work, but sometimes it can be a lot of numbers and I don't want to do.
Thank you.
I'm overwhelmed with all the numbers.
We have the last 2 pages.
Perfect.
All right, so as Mr. Vince mentioned, we obviously are discussing compensation in House Bill 2. My big focus today is really discussing compensation and what House Bill 2 refers to when it comes to our employees here at the district. A little bit different than property taxes, so you can ask all you want about them. Good thing Mr. Vince is still here. All right, so before we get started and start looking at numbers, I know you'll have a few in front of you, but I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about the overview of House Bill 2 and what the purpose of it is. So House Bill 2 implemented the teacher and support staff retention allotment. It was passed on June 4th. The House Bill 2 provides a targeted teacher retention allotment, which is referred as TRA, and the support staff retention allotment, which is SSRA, to help districts retain experienced staff. The funding is not based off of enrollment or ADA. I know a lot of times when we discuss how do we get funding, it comes from that overall enrollment in the ADA. Instead, it's based off of qualifying personnel roles. That's important, and I included that in here so that you understood when we submit our data to the state every fall, we have to make sure we have everybody coded correctly. So as long as we coded everybody correctly for a classroom teacher, we're receiving that fund from the state to be able to fund this increase for all classroom teachers. Our district does qualify under the 5,000 or fewer enrollment student provision, which is important and huge for BCISD because there were two provisions. There was a 5,000 or fewer enrollment or 5,000 and higher enrollment. Because of our district size, we are under the fewer, which is going to be a positive reflection here on the next slide. So how is the teacher retention allotment, TRA, determined? It applies to only classroom teachers as defined by House Bill 2. That is key because it is only classroom teachers. That is another reason why we're talking today, because we're going to give you a lot of different scenarios, but I really just wanted to start the focus on what is the TRA and what is the SSRA so that we understand moving forward and can kind of have a clear determination on what you want to do as a board and as a district as a whole. The allotment amount for the district with 5,000 or fewer students, so it's 4,000 per teacher with 3 to 4 years of experience, 8,000 per teacher with 5 or more years of experience, and $0 for teachers with 0, 1, or 2 years of experience. That is big. We're going to talk about it here in a bit, but these funds will begin September 1. I put September 1 because that is when the state is estimated to provide it. Our goal here at the district is to implement it on that first paycheck for all classroom teachers. We will work as a team to get it ready to go. Mr. Vince did share that we should receive those funds for that date, and that's why I included that on this slide here.
Can I ask a question? You may not know, you may know. So this is now, let's say a teacher with 2 years experience got nothing. On September 1st, 2026, they're gonna have 3 years experience. Do they automatically move to the 4, or was this a one-time deal, like a freeze frame, this is where you're at, and then that's it?
We're going to talk about all that here in just a bit. So, but yes, so we've already did the determination. We've already sat down as a team. We've already rolled their years of experience. So if they were with us this past year as a year 2, they're rolling into a year 3. So they will receive the 3 to 4 years of experience. But that is the efficiency study that we as a team and a department here is going to be working on to make sure that we're ready to go with that data. And we started pulling that back, I would say, in May when we were hearing this through the legislator that they were possibly proposing it. I took my team, said we're going to sit down and analyze everybody, make sure that we have everybody correct. Mr. Vince and myself and his team and my team, Mr. Chris, we've all really been analyzing that to make sure we have the correct data to make sure that an employee truly is receiving the correct either 4,000 or 8,000 moving forward. But it is a very important step. So now what is a classroom teacher under TRA? This is important because as I mentioned, it's how are we coding them here at the district? It's 087, so they must teach a minimum of average of 4 hours per day. Our district does a phenomenal job with all of our teachers teach more than 4 hours per day, so we are not going to have any issues on that piece as long as it's in an academic instructional setting or career and technology instructional setting. Another key piece was must be enrolled traditionally it requires an SBIC certification. I wanted to highlight this piece because we do a phenomenal job here at the district with hiring district of innovation teachers. We have some that have done industry work and they come back and they bring a lot of success to our district.
I wanted to make sure that those classroom teachers received it, and obviously it does fall under that, so it does include certified and uncertified teachers. So if they do not hold an SBIC certification or under the District of Innovation, they still will receive that placement. So that is key to our district due to the amount of DOI teachers that we have here. And it does not include administrators or staff within a non-teaching role. So as I mentioned, just classroom teachers, nobody else, and that is strictly for the TRA, the teacher retention allotment.
To clarify, district innovation teachers, yes. Obviously, traditional teachers. Like, so long-term subs don't get SBIC. Right. Okay.
And they, just to clarify that piece, they're actually completely different for when we submit to the state. So unfortunately, we wouldn't get the dollar amount from them because we put them as a completely different partnership. So next, required use of the TRA funds. For the 25-26 year, the districts must allocate funds based off of eligibility to qualify the teachers. So back to your question, Mr. James. We're making sure that we're having everything identified, making sure that we as a team are coming in, identifying the years of service, making sure it still matches what their placement is now, moving forward, all the things that go into it. We are starting in the 26-27 school year. The district must use the allotment to maintain salary increases for teachers and adjust the base pay structure accordingly. You'll see here in a bit, Mr. Chris and I, and Mr. Richard, and Mr. Bitts, and Mr. Brent over there, even though you can say he's not part of it. We all had to sit down and really analyze how are we going to do this moving forward to make sure we still receive the funds? Because ultimately, we've just discussed how big of a deficit we're in right now, but how are we going to continue to maintain that support? And so we'll talk a little bit about that here in just a bit. So next, moving into, before we go to the support staff, did y'all have any questions for the teacher retention allotment? This is just strictly classroom teachers. We're receiving it, we're going to get the funds, we have an estimated number. This is what we will receive from the state. And then we're going to move into the support staff retention allotment, which is going to be a completely different category. So the support staff retention allotment, it is intended for non-administrative staff not eligible for TRA. It applies to both full-time and part-time staff. The eligible positions include, but are not limited to, teachers not eligible by TRA, counselors, librarians, nurses, instructional aides, all of our clerical staff, food service workers, maintenance staff, bus drivers, and bus monitors. I included the full-time and part-time on there because it is key. Those bus drivers and bus monitors are part-time employees, but they do a lot of stuff here for the district. And a little bit of our food service could be considered as a part-time, but I want to make sure that those are always identified because they could fall under the support staff retention allotment. Now, the support staff allotment plus local funds may be used to support early career teacher pay as well. And that's the next couple of slides that we're going to discuss. So back to your first question, Mr. James, of the 0, 1, 2, the library. That's where we're going to start talking about that.
Yeah, the question was more along the lines of when they move out of 0 to 3, they,
Okay.
and they then get a full 4,000.
Okay.
And if they move out of the 4 to the 5, they get a full 8,000. Okay.
Yes, sir. It just depending on where they're moving, but we will discuss what some other options that we come up with just to possibly be able to continue to support our classroom teachers, because I know that that is always our focus as well, is supporting all classroom teachers across the board, not just a specific group like the TRA is allocating, unfortunately.
So that slide basically listed all the people that, and so that SSRA's money we're getting from HB3 to support that group of people.
That is possibly, and we're going to go through all of that here in just a bit. It's a small amount. So the strategic staff considerations for our district, we're going to evaluate personnel roster to identify eligible TRA and SSRA recipients, adjust the pay structures to reflect the TEA guidelines and ensure compliance, which we've worked with TASB on this as well. And so legal, just to make sure we're in compliance, consider sustainability of salary increases with respect to the future funding cycle, and most importantly, align the TRA and the SSRA implementation with district goals for recruitment and retention. Depending on how tonight goes, my goal is to really focus with Ms. Kelly on what can we start doing to get some marketing and recruitment tools out there. We got to get some of these people to come. They're coming to us. but it's at a slow rate. We still have a lot of open positions, especially at, I would say, our early, elementary, I mean, all of them, if you really want to be honest, but, I want to make sure that we can have that opportunity to start posting that and really trying to attract some of these employees to want to come to our districts because we are receiving such a large dollar amount for the classroom teachers with the TRA allotment. So now going into numbers, like I said, I wanted to just kind of give y'all an overview of how the House Bill 2 works, what all it pertains to. And so now we're going to look at the classroom teachers 3 years and above. So this is the funding that we are receiving from TRA. So back on June 17th, you as a board of trustees approved our budget. We did not have a pay increase, so because of that, we had to make sure that we adjusted the pay scale to reflect where we are at as a district. So you can see, moving into the House Bill 2 for the TRA, the first 4 years, so our 0, 1, 2, and 3 are staying at $50,800 a teach. We haven't had a raise in 3 years, so that's why the pay scale is continuing to stay the same. I know sometimes we have some employees that reach out and inquire, how is the pay scale structured? Did you just move it? Did we move up by a pay step? What we do as a district is we always take the pay scale and we continue to move it up with the step. So when we first started in the 22-23, that was our first, that was the last time that the district received any sort of pay increase for the midpoint. In the 23-24 school year, 0 and 1 were at $50,800. 24-25, 0, 1, and 2 were at $50,800. Now we're starting with 25-26. Year 3 is at $50,800. So you're continuing to move through up through the pay scale.
So real quick, just for clarification purposes, we do not do step pay, we do midpoint raises, correct? Just kidding.
And the reason, and that's a great question, I know we as a team have discussed that, the purpose of it is, and this was something that Mr. Vince may be able to speak on behalf of it as well, but from my understanding and Mr. Chris's understanding is that we've never done a pay step, but the district had always received some sort of pay increase. And so I think the verbiage of pay step kind of went away. I don't know when that timeframe was, but I think that was where the understanding of the pay step kind of was analyzed.
I just wanted to make
Mr.
sure
Chris,
that
did you want to add any additional to that piece of the pay step?
No, I don't think so, but that is a good clarified piece, yeah.
It is, to make sure, absolutely, and it's a common question, so we get it asked quite a bit, especially, we have a large group of tenured employees. and
It
that is
creates an illusion,
It
right?
does.
And I know for me personally, as a teacher, when I, all my career, I thought, oh, when I go next year, that's the money I'm gonna get, but that's not the case, but I never knew any different, because we always got a raise, no matter what district I was at, there was always some type of raise in it, so that's where it came from. This is the higher end schedule, is what this is, and so it creates a lot of confusion, and really for me, when I learned differently in this role 2 years ago, it took me a while to stomach it, because I just really did believe that is not the case, and it actually is.
And just to speak to that, Mr. Johnson was still here when we had that information brought to us that, he was here for about 20 years, and he shared that in his 20 years, there was not a pay step, but there was, like you said, probably the understanding, perhaps an illusion of that, given that there was at least a minimum of 1% raise every year. When you actually go to TA's website and look at the pay steps, like Mr. Thompson said, we're over and above, because you look at a 0 right there, we're at $50,800. And in 0 years, based on the pay scale for steps, the starting pay 0 years is $33,960. So the steps are to get them along based on state minimum values. We're up above the state.
Thank you. So next, with taking the 3 to 4 years into consideration, what I did was I worked with TASB, and they helped us create this new approach for the pay plan. So as of right now, our current 0, 1, and 2 classroom teachers will not receive any adjustment for the House Bill funded increase, TRA allotment. Starting at year 3, anybody that's making $50,800 right now will receive $4,000, which will bring their base salary up to $54,800.
For 4 years, it's gonna be at $51,100, plus the $4,000 will bring it up to $55,100. For 5, all the way to 20 plus, which that does include every employee of the district. Any employee, it could go up to, they have 50, 60, however many years of experience. As long as it's 5 and above, they will receive the 8,000. I say that because, like I mentioned earlier, we do have a large group of veteran tenured employees here. That's great for us. We have our success here at the district is because of those teachers and the ones coming in. And I say that because as we continue to go through some of the data that we're going to share today, our 0, 1, 2 is much lower, but that's because we have a lot of staff members that come to us with many years of experience. So that's going to be a perk and hopefully a continued incentive for employees to want to stay with the district and continue to work for the district.
What happens in 2 years if this funding isn't there?
So that's exactly why this is laid out like this, because in meetings with superintendents and everything, if we were to put this in here, then now do we own this? But we don't own it. It's not our funding. It's not coming from us, but it creates the illusion that it's coming from us. We are a pass-through. We're simply a pass-through. And so this illustrates the way that she has it set up so that it's delineated. Here is BCISD's paid higher ed skill, right? And then this is what the state's providing, and that's what it equals out to. So if the intent is for it not to go away, but we don't know, right? And so if it does go away, this is where we're at, right?
So they'll have to.
It just reverts back to what it used to be. So
Right, this is what basically ISD is providing, this is what the state is providing. As long as the state continues to provide this, it will equal this. When the state doesn't provide this, it will equal this.
What does it look like on the paycheck? Is it a subsidy essentially, or is it part of it?
So you're in August or after today, once, because, I mean, this is happening for 3 years in a row, no matter what, we will make the adjustments. We will go to every classroom teacher and make the adjustment for their September 15th paycheck, and they will see this reflection. So wherever they sit on the pay scale, they will see that increase here.
it's just hard not knowing, because once you start making that extra $8,000 a year, you start living different, and so, yeah, when you lose that money, if I don't know if it's gonna happen or not, but.
So, I mean, if you think about it, to me, it would be, when you talk about a political nightmare,
Yeah.
that goes away. I would think that it would not happen, but you never know.
Right.
It's almost like there needs to be an asterisk at the bottom.
And those were some of the things that we discussed too, and that was why Mr. Chris and I decided to set it up that way with Mr. Vance, is because it's just like those ESSA funds. What kind of nightmare did we get into with that? And wanted to be transparent with the staff as soon as possible, because we know this could possibly happen. So let's go ahead and say it now, have it understood, have it posted that way, so if something does come back, this is where you're gonna go back to, depending on whatever that pool is. We're hoping it's not temporarily, but yes, sir. If you want to use that word for now, you can.
And there's no indication from the state that there's a plan for it to go away. And the plan is to maintain it, but you don't know.
You're a little scary for.
Yes. Yeah. Always is. Don't spend it all on it.
But control as you say.
I mean, right now, we're gonna look at it as a blessing because of
Yeah.
it, especially for our staff, we've got a 3-year salary freeze, so we're gonna take it.
Correct.
So with that, like Mr. Vince had mentioned earlier, we discussed a little bit about the TRS fees. The district is required to pay the TRS portion of what we submit. So when we start looking at a lot of this data, you'll see over the next couple of slides, I broke it down so that we can kind of track it as we go through the next few slides. So as you can see, the teacher retention allotment costs, we're waiting for the state. I don't know what that dollar amount is gonna be. It's gonna be an estimated from the state, but I wanted to include that here.
Mr. Vince mentioned the allotment, for basic cost, the ABC. He did share this number with me, is that it's the 368,138. But again, it is estimated from the state. Per all of the classroom teachers that we took, based off of some numbers that we ran, we came up with an estimated number of 91,410 for the TRS cost for the district. That could have possibly gone up with some of the numbers that Mr. Vince ran, but I at least just wanted to kind of give y'all an idea of what we're looking at. So what we did is we would take the beginning allotment for the ABCs, subtracted by the TRS for the classroom teachers, where the remaining balance is the 276,728. So right now, none of this is hitting the, it is not increasing the deficit. We're in the group. Now the next couple of slides we're going to look at is what are we going to do with all of our other staff? It's important that we discuss today because all staff make this district go round. I know a lot of the focuses that we discussed here at the district is what are we going to do to help support the classroom teachers? And that was one thing that Mr. Chris, myself, and Mr. Rich really wanted to analyze and identify is what can we do with those 0, 1, 2, and the librarians. I will make it known that our librarians do fall under our teacher pay scale. It's not unique to every district, but it is unique to our district because we're a much smaller district. If you work with TASB, a lot of times it's going to be some of your larger districts that have, 35,000 employees, thousands of employees, and so it doesn't fall under that. But because we are much smaller, our librarians do, and so I want to propose an option here for our librarian staff just to make sure that that is identified there.
Librarians have their own certification, or are they SPEC certified, or what do they have?
They have an SPEC certification.
Can we put them in the classroom for 4 hours a day, get them $8,000?
That's what I'm going to ask you for here in a second.
Would they want to work in the classroom before? Of course.
But I'm hoping won't have to fall under that if we should do it for this direction.
Okay.
So with the classroom teachers, our 0, 1, and 2 are currently not receiving anything from the House Bill 2 funding. As you can see, it is blank here. What I've done is worked with TASB to create a model that where we can potentially give something to the 0, 1, and 2 per the support staff allotment. So I mentioned earlier that the support staff allotment could be tied with local funds to give some sort of incentive or raise to our current staff. So now we're talking about the support staff allotment and possibly dipping into it to give some sort of incentive to those 0, 1, 2, and librarians. So if we were to use the unfunded allotment adjustment, which would come from the SSRA, we're looking at one at 50,800. We'd add 200, which would bring their base salary up to 51,000. Number 2, or your service 2, would get 400, which would bring them up to 51,200, which would give some sort of differentiation and not staying at the 50,800, which we've done over the last 2 years.
Where those numbers come from?
We've worked with TASB with those. Yes, sir. They looked and analyzed our budget, also looked at where we were at as a district and proposed starting with that dollar amount. Like I mentioned, we do have a lot of tenured employees. So you're probably looking here. So this is the starting SSRA allotment, which I received from Mr. Vince. This is an estimated number, but this is what we would be receiving from the state. 127,958. Not a lot of money to work with, but we want to do our best to be able to provide what we can, especially to those classroom teachers and those librarians, to make sure that they get the support that they need. The estimated cost for the adjustment, like I mentioned, we don't have a lot of 0 to 2. We've done a great job with retaining a lot of our teachers, but I want to make sure those librarians get part of this. And that's where a lot of our librarians are tenured librarians, and so they do fall under the 8,000 versus the 200 or 400. So that's where that dollar amount comes in. So the remaining SSRA allotment, and you took that number minus that, we're at 114,358. I brought the remaining ABC allotment from the other slide for the classroom teacher. Like I mentioned, we're at the 276,728. The estimated cost for TRS, because always remember, you'll see it on every slide, we have to pay the TRS portion. The estimated cost that was, that we came up with was $1,122, but that can still pull out of the ABC allotment, which is a positive for our district. And so as of right now, if y'all as a board were to approve the 012 in librarians tonight, it would not be increasing the deficit, because that's only gonna come from the SSRA allotment.
Librarians money is passed through as well. It's from the TRA.
That's
You
just
say,
Well, we would be funding it.
yeah, they're not, I don't wanna use it all.
That's just sorry, we were gonna fund 0, 1, 2, and library.
Okay, there's only 2 librarians, I'm guessing.
There's one.
One.
There's only one, everyone else is different.
Okay, I see it, for 13.6. Okay. From SSRA. Okay, I'm following.
Problem, if I have to stop, always ask, because like I shared earlier, it's a lot of numbers and a lot of data. So now, we've talked about classroom teachers, now I want to talk about our support staff, excluding APs and above. I say APs and above because administrators are cannot be considered out of the SSRA allotment. None of these allotments can have those administrators fall under it, so in order for us to start analyzing the figures, we had to start with the classroom teachers and work our way up. So the next couple of slides, what I'm going to discuss is the support staff excluding AP and above, it giving y'all the percentage of a 1% midpoint for the tasking model, a 2% midpoint for the tasking model, and a 3%. So for this slide, I'm going to go through the top part. I'm going to go through everything, but the next couple of slides, I will continue to bore y'all with all the numbers, but just wanted to kind of give y'all an idea of where I'm at. So starting back at the top, remember we're starting with the SSRA allotment, which was $127,958. The estimated cost for that classroom teacher, 0, 1, 2, and librarians is at the $13,600. That brings our remaining allotment to the $114,358, which is not increasing the deficit. If you pulled over the ABC allotment from the classroom teachers, which is specific to our TRS that we have to submit to the state, it started, it came with the $276,728. The TRS district cost for the classroom teachers 0, 1, 2, and librarians is looking at an estimate of $1,122. So that brings the remaining, after taking that out, for the 0, 1, 2, and librarians to $275,606, not increasing the deficit. So now we're going to talk about support staff and the 1% midpoint based off of the tasking model. When I receive this data, the clerical professionals, we're going to talk about our instructional aides, our support staff, our receptionists, registers, anybody that is here to support this district to make it run the way that it runs. Our auxiliary staff is going to be Mr. Brent's team, like our maintenance workers, some of our food service workers, all of our bus drivers, anybody that is pertaining to that department. Special education, self-explanatory, special education, just anybody like our OTs, LSSPs, speech language pathologists, anybody that falls within that department. And then estimated professionals, I had to pull this number out. You can see that it's more of a whole number compared to these numbers. I rounded it just to make it an estimate, but our professionals normally fall under the administrative portion. But for this data, I could not include the administrative portion on here. I had to pull that number out because of the possibility of funding it out of the SSRA. So I wanted to make that known here, because you see more of an exact number versus open number here. So that brings, if we took this remaining number, this 114,358, subtracted it by all of these, it now puts us into a negative. So it is going to increase the deficit based off of a 1% for all of these staff members, excluding an AP and above. So we would be at a negative 23,991. We would then again still have to pay towards TRS, but we're fortunate that this number can still come out of the ABC allotment. So the 5,000, the estimated 5,295, we would subtract that by this number, and we're not getting the deficit. The TRS is at 270,311. So now as we move into a 2%, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to talk about this up at the top, but if you want me to reiterate it, please let me know. But starting with clerical professionals, If we were to do a 2% midpoint TASB model, for clerical professionals, it would be 68,265. Auxiliary would be 76,643. Special education would be 35,785, and estimated professionals would be at 21,000. So with a 2% midpoint TASB, it would increase our deficit by 87,335 for just support staff plus classroom teachers, 0, 1, 2, and librarians. That again would be bring the estimated TRS cost to 10,591. Again, we're under there. It's not hitting the, not increasing the deficit because of the agency allotment for TRS. And then the last one is a 3% midpoint based off of the TASB model. If we did a clerical professionals for the 3%, we would be at 92,551. The auxiliary would be 100,959. Special education would be at 46,240, and the estimated professionals would be at 31,000, increasing the deficit to 156,392. With the estimated TRS would be at 15,086, which would bring the remaining ABC allotment down to 259,720, which is still not increasing the deficit. So this is the support staff, including APs and above. Now, moving on to administrative staff, APs and above. So this is every employee here at BCISD. It's important that this is added here, just like I shared. We'll all make a decision, if you will have the opportunity to make a decision, but all staff make this district go around, so I always want to make sure that we highlight all options to be able to make a fair decision on what is best for the district. So I'm not going to start up at the top, but I will start with clerical professionals. So again, based off of the 1% midpoint TASB model, for clerical professionals, it's 46,324. Auxiliary at 1% is 54,160. Special education is 28,865. Estimated professionals is 11,000. So we would be increasing the deficit for the support staff, excluding AP and above. The estimated TRS cost would be 5,295, which could be pulled out of the ABC allotment, not increasing the deficit. Now we're including the estimated as administrative professionals. This again is an estimate. All of these are estimated numbers, but I had, like I mentioned, to pull this group out. So with that number, we're looking at for a 1% for all APs and above, which is assistant principals, directors, chiefs, all administrators or executives, chiefs that fall under that umbrella are falling under the estimated administrative professionals. And we're looking at for a 1% midpoint based off the TASB model at $129,065. So that brings a total, increasing the deficit for all staff at BCISD at $153,058 as an estimate. For the estimated TRS for just the administrators, that is at $1,710, which again is still not hitting the ABC allotment due to, or not hitting the deficit due to the ABC allotment for the TRS portion. The 2%, I'm going to just drop down to the administrative part. We would be looking at, based off of the 2% midpoint for the TASB model, at $166,335. So that would bring the total deficit, or increasing the deficit for all staff to $253,670, which for the TRS is at $3,421.09. Which again, once you take it out of the ABC allotment, brings it down to $261,594, which is not increasing the deficit. And then the administrative staff at a 3% is $173,298 from the midpoint, increasing the total cost for the deficit to $329,690. TRS, that would be at $5,131.63. Which again is continuing to not hit the ABC allotment because we're not hitting the deficit because of the ABC allotment.
So that last page would be every single employee.
Yes, sir. Under the 3% midpoint.
Teachers, 4 years and above, Teachers and librarians working above getting capacity for everybody's getting a 3-point bid.
Because this is not, and I have a recap here because that's a great question. So the 3 and above, they're not gonna be on here because we're receiving those funds from the state, it's the pass-through. All of the data that is on this recap is specific to the SSRA, which is the 127,958 that we would be receiving from the state, plus any additional local funds that the district would have to use in order to fund any sort of incentive rates for the midpoints. So starting from the top, we have the teacher retention allotment cost. Again, we're still waiting from the state. I don't know what amount it's gonna be estimated, but we don't have to worry about this. All of our classroom teachers with 3+ years of experience and above will receive the increase from the state. For Mr. Vince's dollars for the allotment of basic cost, the ABC, that's $368,138, and that's just an estimate from the state. That brings the teacher retention allotment cost to 0, because it's not gonna increase the deficit. And then the district TRS cost for all of our classroom teachers, 3+ and above, it's $0, because it's not gonna hit the deficit, because all of that we're getting from the state. Now with the SSRA, the support staff retention allotment, we are estimated to receive $127,958. For a classroom teacher 0, 1, 2 in librarian, it would cost us nothing, so it's not going to increase the deficit. For the TRS, because we can continue to use the ABC allotment, it's continued to set at 0, not going to increase the deficit. Once we start discussing the 1% midpoint incentive or raise for our support staff, excluding the AP and above, a 1% is at $23,991, which would increase the deficit. A 2% and excluding AP and above is at $87,335, increasing the deficit. Support staff at 3%, excluding AP and above, is at $156,392, increasing the deficit. However, all of these options with the TRS is going to be at a 0 cost and not increase the deficit because of that allotment. And one thing that Mr. Vince did share with me, and I may have said it, but I just want to make sure it's clarified, is because it's TRS and it's supporting that for the pass-through, that's why we were able to use this money through the ABC.
Right, so that's the figures that I showed you guys earlier, we're excluding the teacher retention allotment, the SSRA, and the ABC allotment. Because the ABC allotment is an allotment used for salary increases, but it's allowed to be used for contributions. Would you expect an increase to your contribution share?
What else can the ABC possibly?
That's still, that's what I've used for so far.
Benefits,
Basically,
some medical insurance contributions.
what is looking like, what I've seen so far.
So
Some papers out there, by districts to wanna, I guess, say, okay, whatever the SSRA doesn't cover, can use the ABC allotment on something like that, and so we got very little.
Yeah.
But we could continue to the TRS contribution.
I'll get out the way. So now looking at the administrative staff for the 1%, just as a recap, was $129,065, which would be increasing the deficit. A 2% for the administrative staff, APs and above, is $163,335, which would increase the deficit. And then a 3% for AP and above is $204,298, which would be increasing the deficit. And that's just the numbers, that doesn't include subs. Now down here, we're including both the support staff and the administrative support at 1%, which would be $153,058, which would increase the deficit. At a 2% would be $253,670, which would increase the deficit, or a 3%, which would be at $360,690, which would increase the deficit. So with all of that, probably wondering what are your determinations? What are your expectations for tonight? What we would need from the board, in regards to the compensation piece is, some motions. The first motion would be either to the approval of classroom 0, 1, 2, and library compensation, which would not increase the deficit. Again, that would all come from the SSRA allotment. It would bring it down to that 114, so nothing would change. The district would not be hitting the current deficit that we're in right now. If we move to the second option, which would be approval of support staff and administrative support at a 1%, so that's all employees here at Bay City ISD, we would be increasing the deficit to 153,056. Again, that's an estimate, could go up, could go down. If you approved the support staff and administrative staff at a 2%, that would increase the deficit to 253,670. Again, an estimate could go up, could go down. Or option 3, which would be approval of support staff and administrative support at 3%, which would increase the deficit to 360,690, which again is an estimate. It could go up or could go down.
I'll say something ignored. Thank you, because I actually understood that. I don't know.
Oh, God.
I know where all the money is coming from, and where it's going, and how to fund like each piece.
Yeah.
And so, like,
Well, but because it took a lot of work, but
yeah.
that was one thing we as a team wanted to, because it's a lot of information, and being able to explain it is important, because I don't want y'all to have to make a decision that the compensation, we want all of our employees to totally understand the good things that we're doing.
Yeah, and I think in years past, trying to get the 3% raise has always cost us well over $1 million, and so we have an opportunity this year to do 360. I'm on the board because I haven't had this conversation. This is really my first time understanding it just now. So.
Well, I do have a quick question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, please.
So the 0, 1, 2 and librarians.
So what Mr. Bates was sharing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he asked me if food service workers were in this number, and I said yes. And he said, there's a possibility that it could even go down because food service comes out at
240, so I can't take the credit for that. Mr. Randolph, kind of going back and forth here, just brought that to more attention. Basically mentioned because they're paid out of a separate fund, that these amounts that we're seeing here about that are increasing the deficit, that you were sharing for the SSRA, it should actually be, a little bit smaller, including his salary as well. He wouldn't be eligible for SSRA because he's an administrator. But since they are paid out of 240, it's a separate fund, it's similar to title funds. We adopt 240, but these, him and his group would not be a local deficit. So whatever we're seeing for the increase in the deficit, I can't give an exact figure right now because I don't have the data in front of me, but if it indicates those deficit numbers should be smaller for sure.
If this group gets a raise, where does the raise come from?
From, so remember, it's a separate fund, so fund 240, we adopted that separate from the MNO and INS budget. So you had MNO 199, 599 INS, and you had food service 122. And they're the ones that were they're dealing with the opposite problem of having excess fund balance. So kind of just a refresher when we adopted last month in June with that. This government does the one time you'll hear me say that actually seeing a negative or having a deficit budget is a good thing, because that's what the Texas Department of Agriculture is expecting us to see, because they're saying that they have too much fund balance and at one point they start siphoning off money, even though they're the ones that create the issue.
So one of the things that I just want to point out, that with a 1% for everybody, at 153,056, at the end of this year with the disaster pays, if we don't get the property insurance, it takes our fund balance from 184.9 to 169. And if we do get the pennies, it takes it from 3149 down to 2996. If the next year we don't get the Vader, it takes us from no property insurance with negative 2.4 million to negative 2.6 million. And if we do get the insurance and we don't get the Vader, it takes us from a positive 116 down to a negative 36. So I think it's important to consider what that long range effect may be, because we have to look at long range. I think, that's something that and the only reason I point that out is if we went to a 2% or a 3%, that long range effect would be even greater. And I don't know if you want, what my recommendation is to you guys, but I'll be happy to give it to you if you want. And my recommendation is that we stick with a 1%. If we do a 2% or a 3%, if any of these scenarios play out, it's gonna be the difference in making payroll and not making payroll. Especially with our, with the cash flow problems, when you get a decrease in fund balance, and it's important for everybody in here to know that your fund balance is exactly like a checkbook. If I know that I'm getting $5,000 a month, that I get paid, and that's all I got in my checking account, but I don't get paid until the 25th, but I gotta pay all my bills on the 15th. And I've got more bills than what that is, I don't have no cash flow to cover, right? But if I have $10,000 in my account, and I get paid, I get paid 5,000, I got 5,000 that's in there, sitting there already. If I have to pay bills early, I can cover that because I've got that balance in there. That fund balance works very much the same way. We pay out on the 15th, and not every month, it may be every other month, or we may go 3 months, then we get the payment from the state on the 25th. So the fund balance has to be healthy enough for us to be able to continue to pay out what we need to stay afloat. So I just offer that for consideration.
So you're looking at, I'm trying to reconnect to the internet. You're looking at the worst case scenario if we don't. Is this the property insurance valuation? We don't get that, is that what you're looking at?
That's both. If we got it, it would still increase. Still increase. But like if you were 26, 27, and you had the property, the insurance, let's say we don't pass the paper.
Right.
Okay, we have property insurance. We'll go from a positive 116,000 left in the fund balance right here.
Yeah, I finally got it up.
Down to negative 36,000.
Included, but without the paper. Well, we're screwed either way with paper.
Yeah, right. But what I'm saying is that the higher that you go with this, the further you're compounding the situation.
Correct.
So I have a question about 0, 1, 2 in librarians. So the option for 0, 1, 2 in librarians that was given was the 200 for a 1 and 400 for a 2. How does librarians fit? How does the librarian fit into that 0, 1? And is
Only
that
because she made it known, she is a tenured employee, so she would come in at a much higher than 8,000 because of the many years of experience.
so? Do we have librarians that fall into that 0? That falls in.
No,
One librarian.
we
That's
have
what-
one librarian
so-
and she would fall under the 8,000.
So really, it's a classroom teacher 0, 1, 2, no librarian in that mix.
Currently.
No,
No, it would have to be the librarian, so we have the 0, 1, 2 in the library. And so that would, so the 13,600, when we calculated the 1 and 2s, since there's smaller numbers, the 200 and 400, it was a much smaller, it was like 5,000. Plus the additional 8,000 for the librarian is what brought it up to the 13.
Okay, that's where these numbers are on.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're.
I don't normally discuss an employee, but
Right,
since
well,
she mentioned it, it was.
Well,
and
that's
she is
why I was
absolutely correct.
confused, because I was like, where? So thank you
Yes,
for
ma'am.
clarifying.
Absolutely.
So if we do 1% pass the Vader, this is something we get revisited if we did pass the Vader.
The Vader's not until November 26th.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we're doing this, well, we're gonna try to do,
Right.
well, we gotta redo disaster pennies, and it pretty much goes
So,
through.
Right.
but disaster pennies
Next
will go
year.
away.
But next year we say.
Yeah.
Right.
So disaster pennies will only be for a year, and how much is the disaster pennies?
3.6.
So
That,
next year when we're having this discussion, it'll still be unknown whether or not the Vader's passed.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Keep in mind that 3.6 is based on property values, so,
Right.
we still don't have certified values, we don't have those until, by statute, they don't know those to us until July. So we probably, for July 25th, we typically see those coming around July. More versus.
so when you factor in the, sorry, I'm back to the 0, 1, 2. At a 1%,
They will not be considered as, I'm sorry, I'll let you.
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry.
Is there a way to consider them at that 1%? Because $200, and then we're turning around and giving all the other employees that are not included in this a 1%, but we only gave them 200. Is there not a way to say we're doing 1% for 0, 1, 2?
Yeah,
There's an option, yes.
a one-year paraprofessional gets a 1% raise.
Well,
But a one-year teacher gets a $200 raise.
Not off the actual salary.
It's a midpoint.
Oh, midpoint. Okay.
And so
Is that what this is, our midpoint though? Do you know, is that why they gave us that number, the 2 and 4?
I don't have the answer to say yes or no right now. I'm sure probably, but I don't want to be confident and say with 100% that yes, it was based off of that. We're also, what Tasby does, especially with that pay scale, is sees where we've been over the last couple of years. And I think that's really what my representative did this past time, is she took those numbers to analyze where we at, where could we potentially go, and that's where we came up with the 200 or 400, just in case it was hitting the local budget versus a 4,000 and 8,000, not technically hitting the local budget. We weren't sure what districts would receive from that SSRA.
I think part of the biggest goal too was to try to offset the freeze that and adjust that to make adjustments for it.
But does that make sense if we're giving a 1% to all and then we're only giving 200 to,
I would think so.
like, that's a,
Yes, it's some things that are thoughts in my head. If we were, I don't have any numbers off the top of my head to give. I can always, work with Mr. Price and get that over to y'all as soon as possible. And we can make that determination. I just don't have anything tonight to be able to say what that could potentially look like. Or if we just did a set number, if the board approved and said we do 1,000 or 500 and 1,000, whatever y'all felt was, necessary based off of a whole number.
Meeting on the 30th, or do we need to vote on this tonight, or, I mean, what time frame?
No, the options, to look at, we should vote tonight on.
so what is our drop dead date on date of when this has to be? And I know part of it is the communication piece of it, for the Vader, the pennies, all of that. But the salary compensation piece, I know we were trying to.
The big thing with how it's gonna affect is that increasing of deficit numbers. Because if I'm now going from, right now, we're only using 13,000 for that allotment for the TR, for the SSRA. Because we're using a $200 or $400 value. So that's going to adjust all of these numbers, technically. Because it could go up, it could go down, or it's gonna go up, because if we did, depending on what a 1% for a year one, and a 1% for a year two, if it's 500, if it's 1,000, whatever that dollar amount is, it's now gonna be a different number for the SSRA classroom 0, 1, 2, and librarian. Then I have to take that and subtracting it from the other dollar amounts that could potentially increase the deficit.
So like a straight 1% for 50,800 is $508. So like that's the max it would be. Because you can talk about it's a big point,
Right.
less, or,
Right.
so that would be the max that it would be.
And your 0, 1, and 2 probably aren't too far off.
Do you know how many we have?
Midpoint's probably
It's
not
a
too
very
far off
low
to start at.
Uh,
Probably right.
I can pull it up on my computer to send to y'all. I wanna say it's,
You don't want to do too much, but then that will.
I don't wanna say it's 50 employees, I wanna say it's 50 as well. It's not a lot, which is why the number's so low, the 13,900. And that's taking 8,000 out of it. So it's really whatever 13,900 is minus 8,000.
So if it was 50 employees that are in that range, that'd be like, if it was a max of 508, it'd be, looking at about 25,000. Which would be added.
would that be for 1 year and then for 2 years?
Yeah.
What would be 2 years?
Based off 50,000. Which was
To
0,
give
1,
a
2.
1 point for both
For
1 and
both.
2 would get big, side numbers.
I was just talking about. cutting that.
Yes, yes. Okay.
So if we were to say, okay, we're gonna table this, and let's say we can post tomorrow for a meeting and have a meeting on Monday, if we can get a quorum on the 21st. What does that do timeline wise? What is hinging on this decision and us tabling it tonight or us making the decisions tonight?
If we did it in that amount of time, that would still fall in line with communication. And it would also still give them enough time to start making adjustments, because they're gonna do a lot of work behind the scenes on getting prepared for that. There's a lot of preparation. Yeah.
We'll have to submit our data back to TSB, and they'll have to come in and make those adjustments. The teacher scale it's already there. That one, we can start the maintenance on that.
Yeah, the adjustments that have to take place on the business side in addition to all the things that are happening at this point of the year. So it's a heavy lift to make that adjustment, whatever it's going to be.
A lot of it is just more also this communication with staff, right? I know we have a lot of staff that are very eager, as any staff member would be, is, what are we gonna do as a district? What can we do as a district to really support them and make sure we can get kind of a sense and what we do.
I guess my question from the technicality is, what would the motion be? Because it just says items of business compensation. Are we approving a new budget? Are we approving a compensation plan? Okay.
Just strictly compensation.
Which would then feed into the budget, which we would have to amend and approve later.
Right.
Where do counselors and instructional coaches fall into the
They were under, have that professional, the estimated professional. Yes, ma'am.
You have IFs that are coded out of title, so instructional facility,
oh, thank you.
so.
And that's what's gonna be positive, is Miss Elizabeth's department does a phenomenal job with some of those assignments too. I mean, we don't take all of that. When I presented today, I'm not taking into consideration the additional funds, because here's the dollars, let's see what we can do. So it could be a possibility of a decrease on the budget or the deficit because of those federal funds and other district funds that were able to fund those staff members through.
So I guess the question
Reach
would
high instead of low.
if you guys want to postpone it, what information would you need to be able to make an informed decision next week? Would you want to see what a variation would be of 0, 1, 2?
And
I think feeding in the federal fund piece into it, showing that. And then the 1% for all of the teachers, not just, well, the 0, 1, 2, right? What would that look like, or the plan would be there?
Well, the only piece with the federal fund thing is, a great portion of that is frozen right now. We don't know if that's going to extend to others. So I would not.
Like the food service?
On the food service piece?
Yeah.
Is that a
Move that, that means to keep back down. Move it out.
Correct, that number keeps taking out.
We service out of the auxiliary.
Do we know what that would be?
Because that's the
We
problem.
could, and honestly, regardless of the funds, we have such an exorbitant fund balance that it would cover it regardless. Whatever the raise would be, if it was 1%, 2%, or 3%, if we were to take that piece out, based on the funds that we have in there already, it would cover.
So would we be able to get an estimate of what that would be for those individuals?
It would be whatever they calculated on their end, and if they just take that number out, I can confirm with Region 3 tomorrow to see. I mean, it's regardless if we use these funds or not. Me and Jordan have already been talking back and forth about getting raises for my staff anyways, using that fund balance because it is allowable. So even if it was taken out completely and we were to do it separately, just my staff only, it's still allowable. So
How long could your fund balance sustain that?
right now, indefinitely, we've been showing positive growth. Well, definitely this year we showed tremendous growth. So my fund balance, actually, I have more that I have to spend. So we might end up having to do a bigger negative deficit this year, just from the amount that we brought in, so.
Take on some paraprofessionals.
I wish if you could put them in the kitchen.
We tried.
Okay, so what is the thought?
If we were to just add, what was the dollar amount? Mr. Griffin, sorry.
508
for both.
Yes, is the max, it would be the max.
Would be the minimum. They make at least 50,000.
But they, so.
If you did 1%.
So would you make 508 the max for?
Oh, we used
For
to-
year 2?
Yeah.
And then you have to go back, but you have to go back, you can't have all 3
Can't
years,
have all
make
three.
it. So you see, what I mean, it's not gonna be, no matter what, it's not gonna be equal,
Correct.
but it could be more. So if you wanted to work backwards with 5%, with a 1% with 508 at year 2, you could, and then just increment it backwards.
We could even do 5. But that would still not be at 1% for the
So-
1 years.
Who at this table can be here on Monday for a meeting? You cannot.
That's the 21st, 22nd.
21st.
Yeah, man.
21st. Trent, are you available the 21st?
If I can get the information, I can submit my
Are
question.
you available the 21st? I just,
Yes,
you can what? Well, we need to know if we're gonna have a quorum tonight, because if we're not gonna have a quorum, we have to make a decision.
I'll say Wednesday.
maybe Mark.
Well, I just texted Mark, hoping he responds.
I'll be here, no problem.
Pretty sure. So we have 4, you can do it, so we have a quorum. So would y'all rather table this and bring it back on Monday?
Yeah, but so we get the information ahead of time, so even though I'm not here, I can just see it and ask questions that might touch the group. So we're gonna back out the food service and IF stuff.
I'll have it to you tomorrow,
So make sure.
for you to be able to share. I'll start with the 508. I'll also reach out to Tassie to see if they can give me a percentage based off of that instead of the 200 and 400. And then once we get that number, it's just recalculating the figures.
So you said you had to reach out, you have to reach out to that.
I don't have to. If y'all wanna give just a dollar amount, we can give a dollar amount.
Because my question is, this is crazy, but we've got other stuff to do.
I could go call somebody
You
and
wanna-
see if I can.
And we can just bring it back later.
Maybe if you can get what that difference is going to be now, then we can still approve.
And, I'm so sorry. I know I keep asking, you want me to reach out to Tassie or just do the 508 for both the 1 and the 2?
I would
Just
say,
recalculate them.
would you guys be okay with the 500, the 250?
If you're in 1 year, you get half of it, if you're 2 years, you get the full.
Yeah.
And then we'll get the food service
The food service.
backed out of this.
Okay, so 250 for a year 1, and 500 or 508 for year 2?
And also anyone who's funded through Title I can also be backed out. So that's instructional facilitators, instructional coaches.
So I think that's important to get all those people that are gonna be backed out, so we can see a true number of a 1%, 2%, 3%.
But it could be the difference between conferences we don't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
it could be.
So then we.
Okay, so let's
I don't
plan,
think so.
right, so let's just plan,
Let's back everybody out that we can.
yes,
Go get
it's a
them
group, Jordan.
ready.
I think it would be better to say, let's back everyone out that we can. And then do the 500, the 250, and then reconvene on Monday for this specific piece. On the 21st at 5. Does that work for everyone?
So how many different options will she show us?
So really what she's gonna do is she's gonna show us this same thing, but with the 2 at 500 and at a 1 at 250, and then with all of the employees that aren't paid through this backed out of it, so we can see the true number. Because it could be, like James said, a difference between us being able to give a 1% and a 2% or a 2% and a 3% because we've removed that
So
amount.
is that true or number?
Yes.
And Jordan, I don't think anybody's interested in only this group or only that group. I think eight
It's
to
just
12, like, don't break those
Yeah.
other groups out.
But I
You
can
can
work
show
on
where
it.
their funding comes from, but
Don't
I
worry.
don't need to see all that.
Well, we'll table it for now and then we'll, yeah.
Do you want me, I still go work on it and see if we have the numbers or just
Take
wait
your time,
until
maybe
Monday?
you're right.
Yeah, we can sure get it right.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I don't want you to.
Okay, so we're gonna table item A. Thank you for all your work on that. I know it was a lot. Thank you,
It's important.
Thank you, everybody. We're gonna real quick jump to item C to discuss and consider approval of private tax resale on account numbers R. I know we should have 48989 and R 48984 pursuant to Texas Property Code, Text Section 34.05. Sorry.
Went right into it.
No,
I know I did.
Felt like she should.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So, this is one of the properties that I believe we offered for public resale a while back. And if I'm not mistaken, you got no bids. Now we have a 100% offer. It's 2 parcels. We put them together when we filed the delinquent tax suit, described them together, so we have them under one legal description. But we received a 100% offer, so with that being said, we only need the school district's approval since we filed the suit on behalf of the school district, it was start off with the school district. The offers for over $57,000, and so everything's gonna be paid, all of the taxes that were under the lawsuit, plus the post-judgment taxes and all of the cost of the lawsuit. So
Great.
I believe the city was also grumbling about mowing this one as well. So it's all that problem as well.
Yes. All right. Is there a motion to be made? We need approval of.
I'll make a motion to approve the private tax resale on account numbers R 48989 and R 48984 pursuant to Texas Property Tax Code Section 34.05.
All right, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second to the motion? All right, we have a first and a second. Any further questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, ma'am. All right, moving back to item B, policy adoption of FD local and FM local under policy BF local.
So, this is the UIL policy on whether or not to exclude those who are not enrolled in the district for UIL activities. If we are going to adopt a policy excluding them, then we have to do so by deadline, and then I'm going to report that to UIL. You may not be aware of this, but the F local allows you to adopt a policy in one city instead of 2 regions. If you're under a timeline, that's why you've got the F local there.
So do we have to approve anything with the F local?
No.
Or that was just information?
I'm just showing
Okay,
you.
we're just
I
using,
wanted to
I just wanted to
reference.
make sure, okay.
And so, FD local, is the policy provision, student enrolled in a private school, including a homeschool, shall not be eligible to concurrent enrollment in the district nor for participating in curricular or extracurricular activities. And then there's another policy that they suggest updating, in conjunction with that was our absence for UIL activity. They just changed the wording instead of unlimited absences for post-district competition. They suggested rewording, however, the district shall not limit the number of absences for post-district or state competition. It's just a wording change with that piece. So the decision point is on whether or not to allow participation by homeschool or non-enrolled students in UIL activities. You do receive $1,500 for a student for each activity that they participate in, which so it's band and football, or they do, each one UIL activity with their reimbursement. My concern is that if students, given that they don't have to be enrolled to participate, then I would hate to see that create a culture where some of them are not coming to school anymore or enrolling in homeschool as opposed, and then we would have a greater revenue loss because districts, they framed out some things.
Oh, yes, so I have been in contact with specifically Lockhart. I have a person that works in that district, and I actually have it pulled up. They accept homeschool students into their UIL activities, but they have a framework that they do advise. So they say that you have to provide proof of residency, that all homeschool students must demonstrate grade level academic proficiency on a nationally recognized program. So it's not just I'm pulling and homeschooling and willy-nilly, whatever you want to do, that they have to be doing a nationally recognized program. And then they also have to submit grades in accordance with how BCISD does grades. So if that's 6 weeks, for us it's 6 weeks. And then they can participate in, but they also, the other restrictions that they have in place are you have to show up for school to that class period. So if they're coming to play football, they have to be in first period or eighth period. If they're coming to do band, whatever that is, and they have to be in every practice. The school is not responsible for any of that transportation. Obviously, the school is responsible for the transportation just like any other student to a game, and that is stated in here, but they are not responsible for getting the child from home to school for practices on a daily basis.
And then we talked about this maybe a couple of years ago. You know, my issue with all of it is that's fine and dandy with the academics thing, but every homeschool student we accept takes away one of our enrolled students from that activity if it is in a sense a competitive nature. You can only roster 20, or you can only have so many in a section in the band, you can only have so many, you know, on a swim team, whatever it is. We're taking spots away from our enrolled students. And then my other thought has always been, if our UIL and our extracurriculars are good enough, our academics are even better, so just come on and roll. So I'm in favor of approving this and excluding the homeschool students, and that's just me.
Do you know how long Lockhart has been doing that?
This I believe is their second year. They just finished.
I'm just curious, so this is, you know, concern like what they experienced that when they switched over to.
I did not.
Yes.
For every one that drops out, you need 4 homeschoolers in.
Yeah, I'm just curious if they had an issue with that.
Yeah.
So Mr. Jones has come to just share his thoughts on that. He's waited.
So my concern is, like, you know, when families usually choose homeschool, they often do it to avoid the public school system. And I was asked, like, if they asked to participate in sport, if it can be seen inconsistent with accepting responsibility of the structure of BCISD athletics or any extracurricular activity. That's the problem that I have with it. Also the liability. What if they get hurt in a sporting event? You know how we got all district-based insurance for our students. What if a homeschool kid get injured? You know what I'm saying? I got to deal with that. I got to deal with that paperwork for that. Also, like I said, managing eligibility becomes more complex. You know, we got a system in the school system. See who's eligible, working this motion, all the people in the front office. How will we track that also to make sure I do my paperwork right on the UI eligibility list, make sure the grades, make sure they're eligible. You know, our kids, you know, some of the families here, you know, we don't have a big group of kids that I think are going to try to go homeschool with the kids that we got here. I think majority of them will be in school like they have been in the past. Also, allowing enrolled students to use our facilities and materials to place additional strain on the already limited resources that we have right now. We study cutting back on stuff, and you know, we give those kids an option, give those families an option. I think it's gonna hurt us more than it's gonna help us for those kids. I mean, families pulling their kids out to be homeschooled besides being in school, where the structured environment, where they're gonna be safe and get things that they need from us. Because you know, I'm a selfish person. If you play football for me, I want you there with me all the time. Because it's more than just the sport to me. I want to change your life. And I think by coaches and staff and everybody that got on cats, all their extracurriculars, when they be around those kids on a daily basis, that's when you go that structure. Like when they have problems in the classroom, anybody at the schoolhouse call me over there from the athletic department. I go walk in the classroom, the kids change like that. Just because the relationship and being the bond that we have being around daily, not just in practicing on the game field. I think being around, being in the school it pays dividends to, you know, the kids that we got in this generation. We are father figures to a lot of the kids. They don't have fathers at home. They don't have fathers at home. We start at 5 o'clock in the morning, it'll blow your mind. The kids that show up and go out there every morning with us this whole summer at 5 o'clock in the morning. Because they committed to what we're doing. They know that we care about them. It's bigger than football. Bigger than football and bigger than any any athletic, and extra. We try to build that bond, you know, them being there with us means a lot to us, and I don't think we have an opportunity to keep the kids in school. I think that's the best interest of the kids in the future. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, sir.
I'll get it put to a vote and we can further discuss it. I'm not cutting it short. I'll make a motion to approve FD local and FM local as presented in board vote.
All right, is there a second to the motion?
Yeah, I second that. At first, I was probably for it, allowing them to play, but I mean, you got a good point on just the brotherhood, I mean, or the sisterhood that you get with teams and being around each other all day, and, you know, those bonds you make, that's a good one.
Questions or comments since we have first and second? I'm very torn for the fact of when we had those people come, when this was brought, was it 2 years ago? Swim team, looking at the programs, that is this a way to use the $1,500, and this is what I told Mr. Townsend, is this a way to use the $1,500 for a program that may not be operating in the black, to get that program to operate in the black, and I don't know the data on swim at this point, but I know swim has been a struggle. We were paying out a lot of money for swim, and we don't have that money to continue to pay out. So is this a way to take that type of program, and that's in tennis, maybe in other ones, I don't know what programs are, but is this a way to pull those programs and kind of bolster them to get them into the black if they're still operating in the red? I don't know, that is my biggest point.
I see your point in just using swim, I mean.
And I use swim because the parent paying.
Yeah, and they've since moved on, but let's say they didn't, so let's just say there were, I don't know, maybe 4 to 8 kids that were swimming that were homeschooled. I don't know that, you know, $50,000 on a $6.2 million deficit is worth, you know, bringing that in, unless we can isolate it to the specific sports and, you know, like golf and those. I don't know if it allows us to isolate it to those. And if it doesn't, then I don't know that little bit makes, you know, because then you run the risk in the other sports of kids dropping again. I do see your point though.
That's my.
But if they're dropping and there's a requirement that they have to meet something, I would say there's a lot of stipulations that, I mean, a lot of standards that have to be met in order for them to play.
There are a lot of school districts in the state.
Yeah, and I still struggle with somebody enrolled is gonna be missing out.
Further comments, questions? All right, so there's a motion on the table to accept or to approve local, FD local and FM local. Okay. So we'll take a vote, all in favor? Okay, we're gonna go down.
For clarification,
Yeah,
approving this means you don't want homeschool.
That means that you want the motion on the table is that the policy is read and within board book. So it will be changed to that we do not accept homeschool students. That's what we're approving. So if you're voting yes, then you're approving FD local and FM local as written in board book.
And I agree, just put that on.
Okay, Mr. Eaton. Mr. Tennant. Mr. Scarpa.
Skipping yourself.
Well, I'll come back because I feel stupid. Laura, or Mrs. Rocha, sorry. I said it right her last name. Okay, and myself. All right, approved 5-0. All right, moving on to consent agenda, approval of minutes of, oh, I'm not reading it, sorry, I got you. Is there a motion to be made according to consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent agenda as presented.
All right, is there a second to the motion? All right, all in favor? Oh, any questions or anybody want anything removed? All right, all in favor? Aye, opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right, we will move into convene into closed session for 3 items of business. Number 1, Texas Government Code 551.076, security personnel devices or audits. The board will convene into closed session to discuss the deployment or specific occasion for implementation of security personnel or devices, including matters related to school marshal programs. Number 2, personal matters if necessary may be taken into closed session to Texas Government Code 551.074, deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline, resignation, or dismissal of a public officer, including contract recommendations for campus and district level administrators and teachers. Number 3, pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074, consider and discuss hiring superintendent and approval of superintendent contract. We will convene into closed session at 8:45.
All the other motions are nice.
Is there? I make a motion to discuss and consider approving or hire contractual personnel. Is there a second to the motion? All right, any questions, comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion passes 4-0. Next item of business number 2, consider and take possible action to hire a superintendent and approve the superintendent contract. Is there a motion to be made? I make a motion to take possible action to hire a superintendent and approve the superintendent contract. Is there a second to the motion?
Me.
Don't get too excited.
Won't be close.
All right, any other questions? We're struggling at 9:20 p.m. All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Yeah.
Welcome to the team.
Thank you.
All right.
The team of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, that.
All right, next item, last item of
Yeah, you
business.
let the record reflect that same step.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I for sure will.
After, yeah.
Thank you.
What time?
After.
At 8:32.
Adjournment. Is there a motion to be made?
I make a motion to adjourn.
All right, there's a motion to adjourn and there's a second. Mr. Eaton seconded it. Real quick, please make sure you check your calendar for upcoming dates of back to school bash, so on and so forth. I don't remember the date, but it's coming up and it's on your calendar. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes at 9:21. We will adjourn this